Thank you. May I welcome members and the viewing public to this meeting of the City Council. Can I first of all ask the General Counsel, David Hollis, to announce the housekeeping arrangements?
Can I have your attention whilst I make a few housekeeping announcements? Please can I request members of the public to familiarise themselves with the fire safety and evacuation notices displayed in the public gallery. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, please take instruction from the security attendants who will be in attendance throughout the meeting. Please can I request everyone to switch mobile devices to silent mode so as not to disturb the conduct of the meeting. The meeting today will be webcast and the recording will also be available for people to view later through the Council's website. It is also possible that Sheffield Live TV will record and rebroadcast this meeting. Photography, video and sound recording of the meeting is permitted, but the Lord Mayor does have discretion to withdraw or suspend this permission if the recording is disrupting the conduct of the meeting or is being undertaken in a manner which could capture personal information, or if a member of the public participating objects to being recorded. Any member of the public due to speak at the meeting who does not wish to be recorded should say so at the start of their speech, and the Lord Mayor will suspend the permission to record their contribution. For safety reasons, please may I request that recording equipment is not held over the balcony. Finally, although there are no longer any specific COVID safety measures to adhere to, individuals are very welcome to wear a face covering within the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Can I now move on to item 2 on the agenda, apologies for absence. I've received apologies from councillors Mike Chaplin, Mike Drabble, Ruth Milsom, Peter Price, Martin Smith, Vicky Priestley and Brian Holmshaw. Are there any further apologies? In view of Hill... Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Clifford Craft sent his apologies.
Right, okay, thank you. In view of the ill health of Councillor Vicky Priestley, the Council is asked to give approval for her period of office to be extended beyond the 5th of December 2023, being the 6-month period of non-attendance provided within Section 85(1) of the Local Government Act 1972. Is that extension agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Item 3 on the agenda is exclusion of the press and public. There are no items of business on the agenda for the meeting where resolutions may be moved to exclude the press and public. Item 4 on the agenda is declarations of interest. This item of business is to enable members of the Council to declare an interest in any item on the agenda. Does any member wish to declare an interest? Okay, thank you. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I should declare in item 11 on the rivers personal interest in that. The Council's rep on the Yorkshire Regional Flood and Coastal Committee, and I'm also a director of the River Stewardship Company.
Okay, thank you. No other declarations of interest. Okay, before I move on to items on the agenda, this is an important council meeting and we've got the full agenda with quite a number of items, and I'm proposing to make the agenda flow more logically and better to rearrange the agenda. What I intend to do, the next item on the agenda is public petitions and questions, is that I will first of all take public questions that do not relate to the Palestine-Gaza issue. Then I will take the petition that relates to Gaza, followed by the public questions relating to Gaza. After that, I will move up agenda item 8, I think it is, on the agenda, which is the notice of motion relating to Gaza. That means that all the Palestine-Israeli-Gaza questions are dealt with together. Is that reordering of the agenda agreed by Council? Thank you very much. Before starting actually on this item, and I know emotions can run high over this, I just wanted to make a few points to members of the chamber and to the public. This situation is a terrible one, and in so many ways, and views will be strongly held and expressed. However, please be mindful of the effect that these words can have. I have been made aware that members of this chamber have been subject to abuse and threats already. And we have a responsibility to our colleagues in the chamber, but also a big responsibility to the communities of Sheffield not to make matters any worse. Yesterday, I presided over a citizenship ceremony and was proud to welcome to the UK as new citizens of the UK and Sheffield, people from 20 countries around the world. In that ceremony, I emphasised the status of Sheffield as a city of sanctuary, but also how our diverse communities all contribute to the city, and we have a situation where we haven't got conflicts largely between the communities. So please be mindful and don't allow this debate to disrupt the community spirit and harmony that we have in our city, and indeed be respectful to each other in the matters of debate as we move forward. I hope you bear that in mind as we carry on this afternoon. Thank you. So, there is a little bit of legalese that I've been asked to read out as well, but please bear with me. I'm particularly to remind elected members of the Council's obligation under Section 159 of the Qualities Act. A public authority must, in the exercise of its functions, have due regard to the need to eliminate discrimination, harassment, victimisation, and any other conduct that is prohibited by or under this Act. Advance equality of opportunity between persons who share a relevant protective characteristic and persons who do not share it. Foster good relations between persons who share a relevant protected characteristics and persons who do not share it. For the purpose of the Equality Act, both race and religion or belief are protected characteristics, and I would draw members' specific attention to the third of those requirements around fostering good relations. You must have regard to this in framing the final form of any motion that is agreed. Thank you for bearing with me in that. So, as I outlined, that we'll move to the public questions. And remember, public questions will be put by a member of the public. They will be answered by a member of the council, actually in this case largely by the leader of the council, Councillor Tom Hunt. And then I will move on to the next question. It isn't a matter of come back and debate, question and answer, another question and answer. The debate is being put, a mover and second will move the initial motion. There are two amendments that will be moved and seconded, and then members of the council will then debate the motion. The amendments will be voted upon, and then we will come to a substantive motion at the end. And I will try and make clear at the end exactly what has been agreed by the council, because the substantive original motion may be amended in some ways by deletions or additions. I do hope all that is clear to members of the public, and please bear with me as we go through the agenda. After we've done the public questions and the notice of motion, maybe then time for a short comfort break for members of the council, and we'll resume after the break with members' questions and then move on to the other items on the agenda, item 7 on the constitutional business, and then on to the other notices of motion after that. Okay, so let us then move to the public questions and petitions. First of all, going to ask Josh Cheeseman to come to the microphone.
Thank you. In light of the ongoing concerns over human rights in the People's Republic of China, including, but not limited to, the violation of the right to freedom of speech and assembly, notably within Hong Kong under the national security law, where Chow Hang-tung was sentenced to 15 months in prison for a social media post, restrictions on the freedom of expression and persecution of human rights defenders, like legal scholar Xu Jiyong, suppression of freedom of religion and expression of culture, not least those of the Uyghurs and Kazakhs, harassing members of the LGBTQ+ community, including Tsinghua University students for leaving rainbow flags on the campus, and its continued position as the world's leading state executioner. With all that in mind, does the Council feel it appropriate to retain its twinning with the Chinese cities of Anshan and Chengdu, and its trade and collaboration agreements with the cities of Daqing and Nanchang?
Councillor Hunt.
Josh, thank you very much for your question. Sheffield twinned with Anshan in 1983, and it must be noted that whilst we are still a twin city of Anshan, there's been extremely limited engagement with the city since 2006, 17 years ago. With respect to Chengdu, this is one of our more recent international partnerships, which was agreed in 2010. The collaboration agreements with Daqing and Nanchang were signed in 2016 for an initial 3-year period, but at the end of that period, none of those agreements were subsequently renewed. Earlier this year, at a meeting of the Strategy and Resources Policy Committee in January, we agreed that we would do as a council a full review of our relationships, of our twinning relationships and partnership arrangements with cities and places around the world. That review is well underway, and it will be coming, an outcome paper from that review will be coming to the Strategy and Resources Committee later this month on the 20th. It will then come back to the Governance Committee and to full council here. So we are looking at all of our arrangements, and they're currently being reviewed.
Thank you. Can I now call upon Clara Chung to ask the question?
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you. This is Clara. I'm a Sheffield, Hong Konger. Thanks for the opportunity for me to ask the question here. So my question actually is, has Sheffield Council previously had any exchanges or dialogues with the cities in the People's Republic of China that actually hold twin city relationship or the trade and collaboration agreement with Sheffield? Has there been any dialogues or exchanges about the protection of human rights? If yes, can you let us know about the detail? If not, why not? And then besides, has there been any other dialogue, exchanges, other cultural activities taking place? Thank you very much.
Councillor Hunt.
Clara, thank you very much for your question. We haven't had any dialogue in respect of human rights at a municipal level with representatives from any of the 4 named cities in your question. Due to budgetary constraints and the ending of our dedicated Sheffield China business programme, we haven't had active engagement with any of these cities in recent years. Last month, on the 16th of October, the Lord Mayor hosted the Manchester Chinese Consul General for a meeting. The next day, Kate Martin, the Executive Director for City Futures, and myself accepted an invitation to meet with the Manchester Chinese Consul General. This meeting took place that day. It was a short meeting to facilitate an introduction. I do note the strong concerns that you raise about human rights conditions, and I note them in both of the questions that we've just heard. Those issues weren't discussed in the meeting that we had, but they will be taken into full account and given proper consideration in the twinning review that is taking place. And that review will come back to the Strategy and Resources Committee in about 3 weeks' time on the 20th, when we'll be able to give more of an update. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I next call upon Simon Jenkins?
Hi, thanks for having me. My question is regarding minimum service levels. Will Sheffield City, as the onus is on the employer to bring in minimum service levels during industrial action, can Sheffield City Council confirm if they or any of their outsourced partners will be using this legislation, and has there been any discussions with central government on this?
Again, Councillor Hend to answer.
Thank you for this question. No work has been undertaken with regards to minimum service levels at the council, and we're not aware of any of our contractors doing that work either. My own view is that the government's proposals for minimum service levels in the event of a strike action would place severe and unacceptable restrictions on the fundamental right of workers to take industrial action to defend their pay and conditions. This is unfair, undemocratic, and would likely put the UK in breach of our international legal commitments. It would make disputes harder to solve, and I think it would lead to frequent and more periods of industrial action. I'm committed to working with our trade unions to explore every possible option to avert the prospect of work notices being issued, and my party is opposed to this work that's taking place by the government on this. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from Calvin Payne.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, councillors. Firstly, I'd like to add my support for the call for a ceasefire and humanitarian intervention in Gaza. That seems like something that we shouldn't really be sitting on the fence about. I want to return to my usual subject. I do feel slightly awkward. Don't usually get an audience from this side. I do feel slightly awkward talking about another subject today, but you'll have to understand that. Because 6 years ago this week, I was sentenced to, I had 3 suspended prison sentences under the council's injunction process, and a process that's now described as, in what's some understatement, unwise. One of my sentences was for encouraging others to breach that injunction, and I don't think I've ever been prouder, looking back, that I did that and had that conviction. 6 months ago, I engaged in the process that the council spelled out: apologies, mitigation, moving forward, the post-Lowcock world. And yesterday, the apology deadline passed. Did anyone notice that? No, don't think so. Not very little effort made to actually apologise. I've not got a satisfactory apology. I've not got a personal apology. I've not been offered a personal apology, and nor have many other people. But I want to talk about a specific, something specific to me, because on June 19th, the Strategy and Resources Committee received a paper jointly signed by the Leader of the Council and the Chief Executive, referring to the people who had these convictions, saying that they would contact directly and work with me to do everything possible to mitigate the ongoing effects. Still waiting. I'd like to talk about responsibility and accountability and consequences, because these decisions were made by people, and most of those people, as we know, are not here anymore. But the consequences of those wrongful decisions and unwise decisions are being felt by only one side of this argument. The people that took the decisions, took that court action, have moved on or retired, and nobody has been held to account for that. I am held to account for that all the time with these sentences and that mitigation that needs to happen with myself and 3 other people. If I'd have been wrong, if I'd have taken a chance with my liberty and future and been proven wrong, I would have faced the consequences. I was proven right, and I still face the consequences. Is stand up to this council, heads you win, tails I lose. I should not be considered right and still all the time have to keep explaining my circumstance or be asked about them. I appreciate I have had a couple of meetings with the General Counsel, and I'd like to appreciate that because Mr. Hollis is the only person in this council who has even spoken to me and appreciated that there's something to discuss. So I'd like to ask you quite simply whether you, the council leader, consider that you have indeed worked with me to do everything possible to mitigate the effect of those sentences on my life. And because I don't hear from you any other way, or the Chief Executive, can you tell me specifically what you have done to mitigate those effects since the Locock report came out?
Thank you. Councillor Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. Look, I want to start by acknowledging the impact that the proceedings had on you personally and to others who were subject to the council's legal action. Whilst we cannot undo what happened, we do want to make sure that we're mitigating the impact of our actions as much as we can. That's been set out in our response to the Locock report. A part of that has been the apology process. I've personally been involved in that and know that in my experience of doing so, and of the others who've been in contact with campaigners, it's brought into sharper focus the personal fears and worries that engendered at the time and since. I do know that you've had meetings with the General Counsel and that this covers both an appropriately worded apology, taking into account your experience, as well as the offer of specific and general support to explain the circumstances should you encounter any difficulties in the future as a result of that court's findings. I understand that you provided the General Counsel with information that you want to be taken into account, and we do hope to finalise that soon. I know this has taken longer than you would have ideally wanted. We need to be mindful of progressing the apologies in a way that is consistent and so that we're not taking missteps along the way. I would be very happy to have a further conversation around this so that we can learn and do this process better. Thank you.
Thank you. And can I now call upon Isabel O'Leary?
Hello, I've got 3 questions. Should I ask them separately and get an answer separately?
No, I think just go through all 3 questions.
Okay.
Good.
Right, I'm aware that events in the Middle East and from the COVID inquiry are all showing that citizens are often the victims of bad leaders making bad decisions with appalling consequences. So my questions might seem a bit trivial in comparison to those world events. But I'm asking in the spirit, which I'm sure you all share, of wanting this council to work as effectively as possible with true accountability. So my first question is about cross-departmental working within the council. The Locock report revealed that a large part of the reason for the Streets Ahead contract being so flawed in relation to street trees was that one department, in this case the Highways Department, did not consult with any other departments, for example, the Ecology Unit, when writing or agreeing the contract. This kind of working in silos is commonplace in large organisations, but it's not good practice. At the risk of sounding as though I'm setting an essay question, can you reassure me that cross-departmental working is becoming embedded in Sheffield City Council by giving me at least 3 examples of current projects that do involve true collaboration between several different departments? And I'm particularly interested in projects that are using the expertise of the Ecology Unit. Okay, question 2, this is about partnership with communities. Again, the Locock report recommended that the council should sustain and embed its recent emphasis on partnership, local engagement and consultation. I'm not sure how well this is going. I've been following issues about Graves and Hillsborough Parks, and have attended meetings of the Charity Trustee Subcommittee. This is the sole body administrating a number of charities, including several Sheffield parks. The members of this subcommittee are all Sheffield City Councillors. They are the sole members of that committee. So I welcome the very recent decision of the subcommittee to form a partnership with 2 community groups. But I do wonder whether decisions and actions to restore the cafe building in Graves Park could have been arrived at much more quickly than the 15 months it has taken if these local community groups had been listened to earlier. So in order to inject some vigour into the bureaucratic paralysis of council processes, would the council consider co-opting members of Friends or other community groups onto the Charity Trustee Subcommittee at a much earlier stage when considering issues in which those groups have knowledge, expertise and conduits for local consultation? My final question is about accountability. I welcomed the setting up of the Lowcock Independent Inquiry into the street tree dispute. However, the recommendations of the Lowcock report were remarkably mild in the light of the damning evidence of council practices, including the unreasonable and disproportionate use of their legal powers, specifically the aggressive pursuit of injunctions against residents who were trying to prevent the unnecessary felling of street trees. This issue of governmental bodies or local authorities using their greater legal and financial power to intimidate environmental protesters is a very live one nationally. I would like other local authorities to learn from the Sheffield experience that taking out injunctions against residents involved in environmental protests is a bad idea. However, despite the apologies extensively reported in the press, these apologies are being made by the current leaders of the council and not by those who were responsible for those bad decisions at the time. So the message so far to public servants is that they can leave a post and move to another post in another city without any personal consequences. We know from the Lowcock report who was ultimately responsible for pursuing injunctions against the street tree protesters. Will the council leaders publicly, without breaching GDPR, use their well-resourced and effective communications department to ask those who were responsible for the wrongful decisions to apologise? This might go some way to restoring the council's reputation by showing a desire for accountability. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, Councillor Tom Hunt to respond to those 3 questions.
Thank you very much for the questions. Look, turning to your first question, working across departments, breaking down silos within the council is fundamental to how we need to be working and fundamental to if we're going to make progress on anything that we're trying to achieve. That's why one of our core organisational values is together we get things done. You know, that's not just a phrase that is stuck up on a poster in the town hall. It is actually how we have to be working across departments and with a range of partners from other public agencies to central government to our communities. So that we can provide a sufficient level of detail in response to your question about projects which involve collaboration, I will make sure that I get a full written response to you. But as you were speaking, one that immediately came to my mind is work that's going on in the north of the city around with a team around the place, where there is input from different teams who have come together to look at a specific part of our city. So we can set that out and I will send that to you to make sure that you get specific detail on that. Regarding partnership with communities, the Lowcock report was clear that as an organisation, we haven't always been good historically at listening to the views of our communities and actively engaging people in decision makings. I'm not going to shy away from that. That's what the report sets out, and it is what we are seeking to rectify. The lack of involvement of citizens led to many of the issues that we saw during the street tree dispute. We're working hard to ensure that different perspectives and views are heard as we develop policy and our work. There are good examples of where this is happening. The city's new autism partnership is a good example of this. It includes neurodiverse people, and it is co-chaired by a neurodiverse person. Our local area committees, again, provide opportunities for people to discuss issues around their particular part of Sheffield and to get involved in helping to shape solutions. And the central LAC, which I'm a member of, that we've seen some really constructive workshop-type meetings around a range of issues. But look, we know we have to go a long way in order to make sure that the voices of citizens are heard louder and that there's input into our decision-making processes. That's why the Governance Committee is and will be considering public involvement and participation as part of its work going forward. Part of the review of the work that the Governance Committee is doing is reviewing public questions, because we know that we want to have a better dialogue with citizens in our formal council meetings. So this will include the involvement of people in committees and council meetings. We'll make sure that the specific points that you raise around the charity subcommittee will be taken into account, and we'll respond in writing on that point in particular. On the last question that you asked around accountability, the inquiry by Samark and its subsequent report aimed to provide us with a process of truth and reconciliation to allow the city to move on from the consequences, the deep consequences of what went so badly wrong during those years and as a result of our mistakes. Apologies were part of that process, and we have undertaken a process to ensure that they've been delivered to people who have been identified and those who have requested apologies. As I said, I've been involved in that process. The report from Samark stated that the response, the apologies, should come from the council, and that is what we've agreed to do. It was the council that made the mistakes identified by the inquiry. Had the inquiry determined that individual apologies were needed for the process, then we feel sure that Samark would have recommended that in his report. Of course, I fully understand the call for apologies to be made by officers and councillors who were involved at the time. We have considered this, but as a current and ex-employer, we hold legal duties, and on balance, we feel that the council asking those individuals for personal apologies is not the right thing to do. I know that some people will be disappointed by that. I would ask that people understand that the council has come to a considered opinion on this, even if they don't agree with it. None of this undermines the sincerity with which we are now going about our work to rectify those mistakes. None of it undermines the sincerity with which we are giving those apologies, nor my commitment to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. There's been 3 questions submitted by Michael Mullin, who isn't present today. I'm just checking. No, those questions will be written into the minutes of the meeting, and the responses as well into the minutes of the meeting. Okay, we now move to the petitions, and we've just had one petition submitted today demanding an apology and action from Sheffield City Council for the raising of the Israeli flag. I've got Julie Pearn is going to speak to that petition.
Okay, thank you, Lord Mayor, and good afternoon. I have a petition to the Leader of the Opposition at Sheffield City Council, which was signed by 1,316 signatures. We, the undersigned, demand an apology for raising the Israeli apartheid flag representing brutal occupation and years of war crimes against the Palestinian people. We call upon the Leader of the Council to write to the Prime Minister and Leader of Her Majesty's Opposition for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and access for humanitarian aid. I first visited illegally annexed East Jerusalem in 2019. I was viscerally shocked to see huge triumphalist banners displaying the Israeli flag hanging on historic buildings forcibly seized by Jewish settlers from their Palestinian owners. I had previously only seen banners like those on images of the Nuremberg rallies. A so-called dance of flags takes place each year in occupied East Jerusalem, when crowds of Jewish zealots and ultra-right politicians parade through the old city in a sea of Israeli flags. We could compare the provocative orange marches through Catholic areas of Belfast. No officials attempt to stop racist and insightful chants, such as death to Arabs. Shops have to be boarded up against attack. The Israeli flag is waved at invasions by settlers, Israeli armed forces and politicians into the Al-Aqsa Mosque or holy sites in the West Bank. To Muslims everywhere, this flag represents racism and desecration. Ultra-religious Jews also spit on Christian nuns in the Old City. The Israeli flag is flaunted on the illegal settlements in the West Bank and on the armoured vehicles heralding night raids, home demolitions, abductions and assassinations. And today we witness on screens the hell on earth in Gaza, where all this has relentlessly led, systematic ethnic cleansing or genocide. Flying the Israeli flag over the town hall has rightly outraged Sheffield citizens of all communities. Ignorance is no excuse. An unequivocal apology from Tom Hunt and Shafak Mohammed for this divisive and provocative act is the very least expected. Ceasefire. Citizens of Sheffield are calling for an immediate ceasefire and full access to humanitarian aid. I commend our Labour councillors for putting out a strong and principled statement, including a call for immediate ceasefire. I welcome the comprehensive motion tabled by the Green Party, including a call for an immediate ceasefire. The call for a humanitarian pause from parliamentary leaders of the three main parties accepts that Israel can continue its barbaric war against a captive population. The parliamentary leaders are out of step with the general will of the country. We call on all Sheffield councillors to make a unanimous, humane and principled call for peace and upholding of international law, and for Tom Hunt to write to the Prime Minister and Leader of the Opposition to make the city's position known. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now call upon the Leader of the Council, Councillor Tom Hunt, to respond to that petition.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Thank you for the petition, and thank you to everyone who's come here today to share your views about the tragic events that are taking place in Israel and in Palestine. I know that this issue is very important to communities within Sheffield. I feel deep sadness about the heartbreaking events that are taking place and that we've seen over the last 3.5 weeks. I know we all feel the same. On October the 7th, a brutal, appalling terrorist attack was committed by Hamas. An attack that shocked the world, and I utterly condemn it. More Jewish people were killed on October the 7th than on any day since the Holocaust. The flag of Israel was flown to show solidarity with the victims of that attack. Raising the flag was not about endorsing any actions taken by the Netanyahu government either before or after October the 7th. A government that has a shameful record of human rights abuses and that has shown little interest in securing peace in the Middle East. Nor was this about taking sides in a decades-long conflict. This was about showing solidarity with the victims of a terror attack, and it was a decision that was taken before the heavy bombardment of Gaza and the ground assaults had begun. The flag was flown on Tuesday, 10th of October. It was to be flown for one day and for one day only until 8 p.m. when it was taken down. We could and should have been clearer about that at the time. I know that this matters to many people, and I understand why people feel that this was not the right thing to do, and I fully respect people's rights to hold that view. That's why it's important for me to set out in detail the Council's decision-making process for flying the flag, and I thank the Lord Mayor for giving me the time to set it out today. Sheffield has a flag protocol, a document that governs the flying of flags at the Town Hall and on other council buildings. The protocol states clearly that in normal circumstances, the Union flag is flown over our Town Hall, and I am proud of that. It also states that there are other special circumstances when other flags may be flown for a short period of time. These are as follows. 1. The national flag of another country may be flown when there is an official civic or another delegation from that country and it is deemed appropriate to do so. Second, a particular flag may be flown when required to do so by the government or another official body. Third, a special flag other than a national flag may be flown when there's a celebration or a major occasion or significant achievement that is of importance to the council or to the city of Sheffield. The protocol sets out that the Chief Executive, in consultation with the Leader of the Council, will determine any requests for the flying of flags over the Town Hall. On October the 8th, a day after Hamas's deadly assault, the UK government asked local authorities to consider flying the flag of Israel as an act of solidarity until 8 p.m. on October the 10th. This meant that our flag protocol came into force. In line with the protocol, the Chief Executive sought my view, but in recognition of the fact that I lead a three-party administration, the Chief Executive also sought the view of the two other main group leaders, Councillor Mohammed as leader of the Liberal Democrat group and Councillor Johnson as leader of the Green group. On balance, Councillor Mohammed and I were both willing to support the government ask and to fly the flag. Councillor Johnson did not support that view. So on that basis, and on balance, the decision to fly the flag was taken to show solidarity with the victims of Hamas's brutal attack on civilians. Other local authorities also flew the flag of Israel, including the three other local authorities in South Yorkshire. Around the country, other councils lit up public buildings such as their town hall or public libraries, which we do not have currently have the ability to do so at short notice. I know that not everybody agreed with this decision that was made here in Sheffield. The decision was taken in good faith, and of course, I and others have reflected on it over the last few weeks as the horror of what we have seen in Israel on October the 7th has been replaced by the horror of what we see in Gaza. Today, I and all of us here, I'm sure, extend our deep sympathy and solidarity to everybody who is grieving, who is hurting, and who is suffering from trauma in Israel and Palestine, but also here in our city. How we express our solidarity and whether it is right to express solidarity are two different things. It was right to show solidarity, but I recognise that this act of solidarity caused hurt for some people. I also recognise that some people think that we shouldn't fly any flags at all on this building. But I also know that there are some people, many people in Sheffield, who greatly appreciated this act of solidarity, including people in our Jewish community, many of whom who have friends and family who were deeply affected by events on the 7th. Flying the flag was not a straightforward decision, and it has prompted a range of responses and heartfelt emotions. I do not believe that in this difficult moment, it helps us if an apology is to be issued for the act of showing solidarity with the victims of a terrorist attack. It would cause further upset and hurt at a time when we need to come together. As a council and as leader of the council, I am firmly of the view that we should always review our actions and decision-making processes to ensure we take the right decisions informed by the right advice. So it is right that our flag protocol is now to be reviewed, and this will happen. Whilst in taking this decision 3 weeks ago, we had regard to our legal duties under the Public Sector Equality Act. As part of the review of our flag protocol, we will look at including a requirement to undertake a formal written equality impact assessment and have regard to a community tension impact assessment via the police to inform that any decision in the future that we may need to take about flying a flag is properly assessed. Future decisions that need to be made about requests should also be made following discussions with representatives of faith and community groups in the city. What has happened in the 3 weeks since October the 7th has been heartbreaking, utterly heartbreaking. There can be no justification for the loss of innocent lives. There can be no justification for the collective punishment of people in Palestine. We need a ceasefire, and we need it now. We need all hostages to be released, and we need humanitarian aid to be released, to be allowed into Gaza at scale. I urge national and international politicians to do everything that they can to put pressure to bring about a ceasefire, to do everything that they can to bring people around the table to resume the peace process with the clear aim and outcome of achieving a free and sovereign Palestine alongside a safe and secure Israel. As a city, I'm proud that we're home to many diverse communities and faiths. Diversity is our strength. And as leader of the council, I commit to do all I can, together with my cross-party colleagues, to bring our city together, united for peace, and standing up against all forms of hate and racism, standing together against any form of racism, including anti-Muslim discrimination and anti-Semitism, and opposing every effort to divide us. I condemn the abuse that many of my councillor colleagues have received over the last few weeks and continue to receive, and I see the pressure that you are under. The task at hand is for all of us to bring people together, to work together, to listen, to work for peace in our communities as the proud city of sanctuary that we are. That's the task that I'm committed to. Thank you.
So why have you used the flag for the last 50
Please,
years?
please,
When
please.
terrorism
Please remember what I said at the start. Can you desist? So far, we've had very measured debate, and I want to continue in that vein. I've got people shouting out is not helping the situation at all. Please be mindful, we have members in this city, members in this chamber, who've got friends and family in Palestine, in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Israel. And they're personally affected by this. I want this to be constructive and going forward. And as I said at the beginning, and as the leader has reiterated now, that we mustn't do anything that seeks to divide us here in Sheffield at at all. I will now move to the 9 questions on Gaza, and can I have Abdullah Okud to ask the first question?
Anyway, I don't know how to respond to that because honestly, that was just, my heart is boiling right now. And I really feel for the Palestinian brother who's here today. Hearing that response, absolutely shocking. Absolutely shocking. Just honestly shocking. And I agree with our colleague there, our comrade there. If that's the case, if that was your response, Tom, and also Shafak, that includes yourself, yeah? If this was your response, why was not the Palestinian flag held as well over the last 15 years or even 75 years? But I'll go into my question, even though you pretty much gave your response and we know where you stand. Firstly, prayers to all the Palestinians who were killed last night. You'd think today that Palestinian flag would be raised based on the fact that refugees in the Jabalia camp, you'd think now there'll be flags, but clearly all of this is just words. So my question was, even though it wasn't the right answer, what was the reason behind the decision made to erect Israeli flag above Town Hall? And this decision demands an answer. We know there's been more to it than that as well, and we know that they have been advised not to put the Israeli flag. They could have put peace flag, but they didn't. Or they could have been smart and they could have put the Palestinian flag and the Israeli flag. But we know where they stand anyway. Firstly, this shows that our city, city of sanctuary, condones the false equivalence of the colonizer. Yeah? And I read last night, colonizers, yesterday's colonizer will be blind to today's colonizer. Yeah? And that response is pretty much it. The city of sanctuary condoned the false equivalence of a colonizer, and the colonized, which inherently stands that supports apartheid, racism, and genocide, and is very deeply worrying position to have, and is not supported clearly by the people of Sheffield. Secondly, this demonstrated that you do not recognize or understand that the violence that we witness today is rooted in over 7 decades of an oppressive condition and Cajun Palestinian people, which is well documented. Finally, do you, Councillor Tom Hunt and Shafak, since it was both of you made that decision, do you agree and uphold the Palestinian people's right to resist as enshrined in the UN Resolution 2625? And as I quote, the legitimacy of the struggle of the people for independence, integrity, national unity, and liberation from colonial domination, apartheid, and foreign occupation by all available means. And for the councillors who did stand and support Palestine, big ups to yourselves. Everyone else, you really need to reflect, because honestly, if this is the response we're getting, blood is on your hands as well.
Thank you.
And big ups to Councillor Douglas for standing by the right side of history.
Thank you. You've asked your question now. Thank you.
Yeah,
there will be a debate in which members you've mentioned, specifically Councillor Shafik Mohammed, will have their chance to respond. But I call upon Tom Hunt to respond to that question now.
Thank you for the question. As I've said, this was not about taking sides. This was about showing solidarity with the victims of a terrorist attack. Okay. Wait a second. This was not about taking sides. This was about showing solidarity with the victims of a terrorist attack.
Selective sides, that's what it is. Shameful.
Please, Please. Thank you. Can you continue now, Councillor Hunt?
I think the questioner's left, but I was going to say, I agree with the comments made by the UN General Secretary that this appalling and inexcusable attack did not happen in a vacuum. As we look to the future, it is clear that there will be no just and no lasting peace without a negotiated settlement that is grounded in the reality of many decades of conflict, pain and suffering. I know that the people of Sheffield want to see that peace process resumed. The only way to end the suffering of people in Palestine and in Israel is through a political process that has a two-state solution as its outcome. I'm sure that we can all agree on that, and I hope that we can come together and urge collectively national and international politicians to commit every effort to making that happen.
Can I now call upon Derek Martin to ask the next question?
Hi, can I just thank you, Lord Mayor, for giving me the time to ask my question on your agenda. The world just now is a very dangerous and fast-changing place. Things are going on now that are completely outside our direct control. However, Sheffield is one of the UK's core cities. That's a group of 11 major cities in the UK. What we say and what we do does matter. Collectively with the other core cities, we could have a massive influence on the present government. Sheffield must do the right thing. The situation in Gaza is appalling. Nowhere is safe. There have even been issued with evacuation orders in the main hospitals. This situation cannot go on. I call on the leaders of the main political parties in the city to act in unanimity, for Sheffield City to lead from the front in calling for an immediate ceasefire, release of the hostages and to end hostilities, and to call on the leaders of the other core cities to work together to do the same thing and to lobby the government collectively. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hunt.
Thank you very much for the question. I do agree, and I hope today that we will come together across this chamber to support motions and amendments that do exactly what you've said, to call for an immediate ceasefire, to call for the release of hostages unconditionally, and to call for humanitarian aid to be let into Gaza at sufficient scale to relieve the suffering that we see. We will raise our voice today as Sheffield, and I'm sure that conversations are taking place within other councils in the core cities, as you mentioned. I am in touch with other core city leaders, and I'll take on board what you've asked today. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll call upon Jasmine Murphy to ask the next question.
On Tuesday, the 10th of October, an emergency protest led to an impromptu march towards the town hall, where hundreds of Sheffield residents voiced their dismay at the Israeli flag that had been raised above the building, shouting, "Take it down." A man, who I assumed was a councillor, watched from an upstairs window, but failed to act. When we could see the council's lack of motivation to represent us, 2 people scaled the building and raised the Palestinian flag, dropping the Israeli flag to the ground. Emotions were very high that evening because of the callousness we saw in the decision to raise a flag that represents an apartheid regime intent on committing genocide. As a result, some protesters acted impulsively, and I am surprised that the situation did not descend into a full-blown confrontation between protesters and the police. Thankfully, no one was harmed. Before the Israeli flag was raised, the council's equalities team had advised against it, rightly so, as it does not represent the views of Sheffield residents, nor does it represent a humanitarian spirit that supports peace and equality. Regardless, the flag was raised. So, my question today is this. Seeing that the residents of Sheffield were so horrified by this council's decision to raise the Israeli flag above the town hall on our behalf without our consent, that some of us took it upon ourselves to remove it at great personal risk, will the leader of this council, Tom Hunt, finally recognise that not only that raising it was disrespectful to the people of Sheffield who oppose its apartheid regime, but also because it was symbolically supportive of Israel's illegal occupation and collective punishment, that it was an act of grave disrespect to the Palestinian victims of these war crimes? Will he apologise to the people of Sheffield for this decision? And will he finally consider paying long overdue respect to the besieged people of Gaza, including children, by raising the Palestinian flag now that they have faced massacres upon massacres far beyond the scale of the Al-Aqsa flood, as is the ostensible reason for initially raising the flag of Israel?
Thank you. Councillor Hunt.
Thank you for your question. I've set out the reasons why the flag was flown. The flag was flown as an act of solidarity to the victims of the terrorist attack. I don't believe that that was disrespectful. I know people disagree with that. I respect people's views. I respect your right to disagree with that decision. We will reflect and are reviewing the flag protocol so that we can listen and learn from this. The flag is the flag of the State of Israel, not of the Israeli government. We can, we can, and many of us do, passionately oppose the actions of the Netanyahu government, but flying the flag was not an endorsement of their actions. It was in solidarity with the victims of a terrorist attack that was committed. I do regret that this decision has caused hurt, but as I've said, I feel an apology risks further hurt and further dividing us at a point when we need to come together, and that's what I am committed to do, and I'm sure that I speak for my colleagues as well today.
The next question is from Zahara W. Can we ask the next question, please? Next.
Lord Mayor, I can answer.
You didn't answer the question.
Can we move on to the next question, please? I'm still trying. It's not. Okay.
It's fine. A request has been made, as colleagues in the room may be aware, by councillors to fly the Palestinian flag. We are doing exactly what I have set out earlier on, in that we are going to consider that appropriately. We're taking soundings on that to make sure that any decision is informed appropriately, and we're putting in action already what we have said we need to do with our flag protocol. So a range of inputs will be had. We will consult over the coming days around that, and the people who have requested it will be informed of that decision in due course.
Thank you. Is Zahara here to ask the next question?
Hi, thank you for having me here. My name is Zahara. I'm a Palestinian, British Palestinian who live in Sheffield. Just to come back into that point, you said you have solidarity with an apartheid state, and you said you raised the flag because of that. When are you going to have solidarity with Palestinian people, 8,800 being killed already? Half of them are children. Half of them are children. How many more do you want us to die for you to raise the Palestinian flag on the City Council of Sheffield? Tell me about that. Now, my question is as the following. Given that raising the Israeli flag can be deemed to be standing in solidarity, it's all exactly the same. And we know with an apartheid state and settler colonialism as described not by me, by UN Special Rapporteur and Human Rights Organization, in addition to being contrary to Section 149 of the Equality Act 2010, Palestinian citizens of Sheffield want to know when will you and the rest of the City Council express its official support for us Palestinians who live in Sheffield. And what substantial steps will it take to prove your support? Thank you.
Thank you. Again, Councillor Hunt.
Thank you very much for your question. Look, I can't imagine the pain and the worry of the Palestinian community in Sheffield here and around the world are experiencing right now. I can't pretend to know the pain and worry that you're experiencing, and my heart goes out to you. Our words matter, and today in our speeches and in the written motions, I know that we will express our solidarity for the Palestinian community here in Sheffield. I know that over the last few days, thousands of pounds have been raised by the people of Sheffield in a short amount of time to support the humanitarian aid effort in Gaza. You know, that is to be applauded, and it shows the deep generosity of spirit and the big-hearted nature of our people in our communities who are coming together to do what they can to help right now. There are many ways of showing solidarity, and we today, I think, can come together to express that for the Palestinian community in Sheffield. Thank you.
Ceasefire now! Otherwise we are losing one child every 10 minutes.
Thank you. We will be having a debate following these public questions when members of the council will, I'm sure, be expressing support for the people of Palestine and the Palestinian community in Sheffield. I'm now going to call upon the next question, Mohammed Mahroof. I think, Mahroof, you've been asked to slightly reword your third question, and if you can bear that in mind, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I accept your ruling and the advice from the monitoring officer. I have rephrased my question already, and I will not use those words. Thank you for that. Lord Mayor, first of all, thank you for giving me time to ask this question. My first question was actually who were involved in the decision-making, and leaders of the council have already answered that question, and now it's crystal clear that leader of the council, opposition leader, and the Green Party leader, they all were involved in the decision-making, and I think the people who have supported that idea, I demand apology from them. The reason for apology is Israeli state is an apartheid state. Its flag represents brutal occupation. Its flag represents genocide. Its flag represents breach of international law, and its flag represents the killing of innocent children, women, and innocent people on the ground. Israeli flag represents that this war is not against Hamas. This war is against Palestinian people in the name of Hamas. For that reason, I wish in the last 3 weeks, all these people who have been killed, I wish they were all Hamas terrorists. But we know they were not. All 4,000 children, they were not Hamas terrorists. So can you please, I will request you regret about that decision, and the next step is apologize. Do a decent thing and move on. That is the best thing the city can do. You cannot imagine to fly apartheid state flags on Town Hall. This city have recognized Palestine and as an independent state. The city, the people are, this is a pro-Palestinian city, leader of the council. You cannot imagine flying that flag on the town hall. Just apologize and then we can move on. But I must say, when leader of the Labour Party have difference of opinion, he is giving a license and he's supporting that license to create and committing genocide on the grounds of Gaza. But I must appreciate the Labour councillors and the members of this council who have difference of opinion, and they have completely different opinion. And yesterday I read the Labour council statement, which I must appreciate. That is very difficult to go against your own party's leader, but I appreciate that you have done a moral stance and then you have kept your integrity. I can remember during the Iraq war, the Labour Party's government went to invade Iraq, but locally, the Sheffield City Council and the Labour Party, local Labour Party, passed the resolution against the war. I think you have done the right thing now. You just demand immediate ceasefire, go against the leader of the Labour Party, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter because you represent a different city, different people. And this is the will of the Labour Party membership. 80% of the Labour Party members, they say, just ceasefire now. Your front bench, your member of parliament, they're asking for ceasefire, and just ceasefire now, please.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt again.
Thank you very much. Look, I outlined in some detail earlier on about the decision-making process for raising the flag, who was involved, why the flag was flown, and I think I've set out my position quite clearly with regard to that. Look, the pain and suffering that we're seeing every day is heartbreaking. I read this week that the number of children killed in Gaza in the last 3 weeks surpasses the annual number of children killed across the world's conflict zones since 2019. Indiscriminate attacks on civilians, on hospitals, on refugee camps, on bakeries, on homes are utterly appalling and need to be condemned, and we have done. Any breach of international law must be investigated. Any war crime must be condemned and investigated. And our government must support the investigation if there are breaches of international law and war crimes have been committed. I do agree there should be a ceasefire now. The statement you referred to by Sheffield Labour Group that was issued yesterday called for that. I repeated that call today in my opening statement, and all of the motion and amendments that we see today make that same call. So this chamber, these councillors here today are clear that that is what we are asking for, and I think we can speak as one on this to come together at a time when we don't want to be divided anymore.
Thank you. I now move on to the next question, which is Famila Hussain.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're all well. First of all, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Famila Hussain. I'm current president of Palestine Society. Over the past 3 weeks, we have witnessed horror unfolding on an unimaginable scale in Gaza. More than 2 million people in the Gaza Strip are struggling to survive amidst a catastrophic humanitarian crisis. And the level of civilian casualties has been unprecedented, with the number of casualties now reaching 8,000 dead. Serious violations of international humanitarian law, including war crimes, continue unabated. More than 22,000 Palestinians have been injured, and over 2,000 bodies are still trapped beneath the rubble, while the health sector is on its knees. Half of the population of Gaza is currently internally displaced, now sheltering in hospitals, which the World Health Organization, the WHO, has confirmed to have received repeated orders to evacuate, forcing the patients and those seeking shelters in said hospitals to evacuate and relocate to equally bombarded southern Gaza, where health facilities are already on the brink of collapse and beyond maximum capacity, is tantamount to a death sentence. Israeli forces have shown a shocking disregard for civilian lives. They have pulverized street after street of residential buildings, killing civilians on a mass scale and destroying essential infrastructure, whilst new restrictions mean Gaza is fast running out of water, medicine, fuel, and electricity. Testimonies from eyewitnesses and survivors highlighted again and again how Israeli attacks decimated Palestinian families, causing such destruction that surviving relatives have little but rubble to remember their loved one by. What we are witnessing today is the ethnic cleansing and genocide of the Palestinian population, war crimes which the international community, including the United Kingdom, has allowed to pass with impunity. And these crimes are not limited to the Gaza Strip. The IDF's repeated attacks on Palestinians in West Bank has also been met with virtually no recourse for accountability. All this is compounded by Israel's systemic and persistent seizure of Palestinian land and property. Its repeated unlawful killing of Palestinian civilians, its constant transfer and arbitrary detention of Palestinians, its policy of restricting Palestinian right to movement are but a few of the many flagrant breaches of international law that Israel is responsible for, which is why many international human rights organizations have determined that Israel's actions amount to the crime against humanity that is apartheid. I stand before you today to ask if this council has any intention of pressurizing the central government into ending its complicity in Israel war crimes, or will it sit idly by as the genocide is being enacted onto the people of Palestine? So my question is to you. In light of the humanitarian crisis currently unfolding in the Gaza Strip, the clear evidence that Israel has committed war crimes and intends to further commit war crimes against Gaza's civilian population and the population of Sheffield's consistent condemnation of Israel's action, I ask if this council will heed the calls of its constituents to lobby the central government to withdraw its official support of Israel, or will it allow the continued unwavering support of a nation which has repeatedly and frequently violated international and humanitarian laws? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hunt.
Thank you very much. War crimes must always be condemned. International law must always be upheld. There can be no collective punishment of the people in Gaza. We must always draw the distinction between the Israeli government and the nation of Israel. It is the Israeli government that is behind the actions that you condemn, and I'm sure many people in this room would condemn as well. Today, councillors are going to discuss motion and amendments about the situation in Gaza. I call on the UK government to make sure that they're doing everything that they can to condemn breaches of international law, to call for a ceasefire, to call for the release of hostages, and to make sure that aid is allowed into Gaza. As I've said, if there are breaches of international law, our government needs to be supporting efforts to investigate them and make sure that people are held to account.
There's no
Thank you. Can I now call upon Hend Rashed to ask the next question? There will be a debate in a short while where the views across the chamber will be set out very clearly.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present a question to the Council. I echo the proclamations made by my peers and the people outside that are chanting ceasefire now and unequivocally opposing the occupation of Palestine. I would like to invoke an honourable chapter in Sheffield's history to contextualise my question. In 1981, Sheffield was the first local authority to pledge to end all links to apartheid. It withdrew pension fund investments from companies with South African subsidiaries and barred South African sports teams from playing its fields. By 1985, more than 120 local councils followed suit and had taken some form of anti-apartheid initiative. So Sheffield holds a legacy as a front runner in advocating for justice and condemning systems of oppression. Amnesty International published a report in 2022 declaring Israel an apartheid state. Make the link. Based on extensive research and evidence showing oppression and domination of Palestinians, segregation, dispossession of land and property, deprivation of economic and social rights, administrative detention and torture, unlawful killings, I could go on. This is not a revelation to those who have been advocating for the rights of Palestinians for the past 75 years of occupation. I urge the Council to honour the pledge made in 1981, which unfortunately proves necessary 42 years on, and end all pension fund investments linked to the apartheid state of Israel. The South Yorkshire Pension Fund demonstrates social responsibility in its extensive climate change policy, and the sentiments of that are transferable to this cause. Money talks, and Sheffield citizens won't allow our money to directly or indirectly aid genocide, discrimination, abuse, wrongful imprisonment, illegal settlements, sieges of colonized populations, and any number of inhumane acts conducted by Israel against the Palestinians. So my question is, on behalf of the citizens of Sheffield who are concerned about the impact of their pension fund in supporting the ongoing lethal attacks on civilians in Gaza and the rising death toll from the continuous bombardment, will the Council call on the Finance Committee to review the local pension fund investments and alternative investments and to divest from any holdings linked to Israeli settlements and companies that support colonial projects in the occupied territories of Palestine? Thank you.
Councillor Hunt.
Thank you very much. Look, I understand the question and the importance of making sure that investments of the pension fund are ethical. South Yorkshire Pensions Authority is responsible for administering the local government pension scheme in South Yorkshire. I've asked officers to obtain a full update regarding when the last ethical review of the pension fund took place and what the outcomes of the review were. Once that has been reviewed, I'll make sure that there's a full written response given to you.
Any sense of urgency at all about state terrorism taking place right now?
Thank you. Can I now call upon Peter Jones to ask the next question?
Thank you. My question addresses the issue of complicity. Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinian people of Gaza. They've cut off food, water, fuel, electricity, and all means of communication, causing imminent threat to the lives of 2.2 million people, many thousands of whom have already been killed by relentless and indiscriminate bombing. Why is this council not doing everything in its power to oppose this genocidal assault and end the complicity of the government and official opposition in this genocide? The question of complicity, I would add, is at the centre of all this. History will look back on Sheffield City Council and say, not just what you said, but what did you do? You said that didn't want to take sides, but you have to take sides over genocide. The government of this country is supporting Israel to the hilt. And these were the people who asked you or told you to fly the flag of Israel, and you obeyed. And secondly, the leader of the opposition, the leader of the Labour Party, is also complicit in this genocide. Both Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer have received letters from the International Centre for Justice for Palestinians warning them of their intent to prosecute UK politicians who are complicit in genocide. Surely, and I say this to Labour members, a Labour leader who is condoning and supporting genocide. Isn't that a red line for you? Thank you.
Councillor Hend.
Thank you very much. Today, all of us, here today, but also through our parties, are going to be raising our voices. Today's meeting is an opportunity for us to come together and make our views known to the people of Sheffield. What you've described is not okay. There can be no collective punishment of the people of Palestine. Civilians must not be targeted. The blockade needs to be lifted. Vital supplies need to be let in. When we have a situation where food and water are running out, when civilians are starving, not able to access good drinking water, when hospitals are at threat of losing power supply, all of us, I think, would be appalled and stand together to call that out and say there can be no collective punishment. There needs to be a ceasefire, there needs to be the release of hostages, there needs to be the resumption of a peace process to make sure that there is a just and lasting settlement for Israel and for Palestine. That's what I saw the leader of the opposition calling for yesterday, and I'm sure that from today, all of us will be raising our voices in Sheffield, but also through our parties with national politicians as well. Thank you.
Okay, the final question is from Lenny Songa.
Just before I do my question, I just want to say how much I've been struggling to hear what's going on, but now also because there's such an amazing demonstration going on outside, it makes it almost impossible to hear. And there's been 5 consecutive demonstrations all in the last 3 weeks, which is a real record about this issue because people in Sheffield feel so strongly about it. They're coming out every few days to protest. So I think we really need to take note of that. I'm speaking as a Jewish member of Sheffield Palestine Solidarity Campaign, and in November 2022, I was proud to take part in the launch of the Sheffield Coalition Against Israeli Apartheid, and to be one of the first people to formally pledge my support to the movement to make Sheffield a city free of all links with Israeli apartheid. I lived in Sheffield when the council supported the South African anti-apartheid movement, and I was very proud of the moral stance then. There are many Jewish people who feel as I do about the apartheid system against Palestinians. I'm here to ask the leader of the council and the leaders of all the other political parties represented on the council if you will meet as a matter of urgency with members of the coalition's coordinating committee to discuss ways in which Sheffield City Council can ensure that it works to break all links with Israel's system of apartheid. And in particular with all those companies which support Israel's apartheid regime. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Hunt again.
Thank you very much. Look, I know so many people in our city, Muslims, Jews, Christians, people of no faith, who care deeply about what is happening in the Middle East and are deeply upset by what we see. I'm happy to have a further conversation with you. I think it is important to be clear that we cannot hold Israel to a higher standard than we would any other country's government for their actions. We can condemn the actions of the Netanyahu government. I have today. I'm sure many other people here today will do so as well. I strongly oppose them, but we must be clear that they're the actions of a government, not of a nation state or an unelected regime. Today we're discussing a motion that considers a request for the council to join the coalition that you've mentioned. If that motion is passed, it will go through to the Strategy and Resources Committee. And at that point, it would be good to have a conversation with you before any decision is made. Thank you.
Will you meet with us?
In the debate, they will. Excuse me, I'm speaking. If you allow me, in the debate that's about to follow this, those members will have an opportunity to address your question, and I'm sure they will take the opportunity to respond to that question. Okay, thank you. That concludes the public questions. As I outlined at the start of the meeting, we're now going to move to agenda item number 8, which is the notice of motion regarding stopping genocide in Gaza. Can I just remind members in the debate of comments that I made at the start of the meeting about the responsibilities that we all have to each other and to members of the community. There's a maximum time limit of 25 minutes for this debate. May I call upon Councillor Alexi Dimond to move the motion, and you may speak for up to 3 minutes.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I would like to extend heartfelt condolences to all those whose loved ones have been killed in atrocities since October the 7th, on October the 7th, and before October the 7th. All the victims of this 75-year-old war of conquest, occupation, and dispossession. It should not be necessary to say that all human life is sacred, that all atrocities need to be condemned equally, and that we must all do everything in our power to prevent war crimes, and indeed the ultimate crime of genocide. In recent weeks, the UK media and leadership of both major political parties have tried to claim that one atrocity justifies further atrocities, killings, and collective punishment. This is not how international law works. The killing has to stop, and it has to stop now, before it is too late. Never again means never again for anyone, and never again is now. The Israeli government has been crystal clear about its genocidal intent in Gaza. Defence Minister Yoav Gallant has promised that Gaza won't return to what it was before. We will eliminate everything. On declaring the ground invasion of Gaza, PM Netanyahu addressed the IDF saying, "You must remember what Amalek has done to you." This statement refers to a passage in the Bible where God instructs Saul, "Now go and smite Amalek, and utterly destroy all that they have, and spare them not, but slay both man and woman, infant and baby." The Israeli government is being true to their intentions. As of this morning, over 8,500 people have been killed, over 3,457 of them children. That number is increasing every second there is not a ceasefire. Like their Israeli counterparts, Palestinian children have names, hopes, dreams, and ambitions. They have done nothing wrong, and nothing justifies their killing. On Monday, I heard from a Palestinian family seeking sanctuary in Sheffield that 40 members of their family have been killed by Israeli airstrikes. Lib Dem MP Layla Moran stated, "No longer are people saying, 'Where do we go to be safe?' The question they are now asking is, 'Where do we want to be when we die?' In the future, people will ask, 'What did you do when a genocide took place in darkness? What did you do when all the powers of the world funded a massacre?' Today, I hope that everyone will vote not just to demand a ceasefire, but an end to occupation, apartheid, and war crimes. I'd like to conclude with the words of Mohammed al-Naouf, just before he was killed in his home in the supposed safety of southern Gaza by an Israeli airstrike, along with 3 generations of his family. He said, "Could be my last post on LinkedIn, as Israel will soon cut off internet in preparation for our genocide and forced expulsion. This comes with the full support of the free world who is cheering Israel on. The world has lost its last shred of humanity. It is everyone's duty to speak about this. Do not let Israel murder us."
Thank you. May I call upon Councillor Maleiki Haybe to second the motion. You may speak for up to 2 minutes.
It almost feels like every speech, every conversation, and now this motion is people auditioning on behalf of the Palestinians for their humanity and begging for an ounce of empathy. It's disgusting. I have 2 minutes, so I'll make this quick. Settler colonialism, genocide, illegal annexation of land and homes through continuous means of forced ethnic displacement. War crimes like the use of white phosphorus, churches, mosques, educational institutions, cutting off electricity, food, water, assassinating innocent journalists with impunity, bombing refugee camps, thousands of the most sophisticated missiles known to humanity on a population that is 50% children. If it acts like a genocidal organization and speaks like a genocidal organization, then it's definitely a genocidal organization. The question is, do our leaders know this? Yes, they're not stupid. They have intelligence agencies and hopefully some level of critical thinking skills. So why do they not condemn this? And the truth is, it's because they're okay with it. They really are. And that's the quiet part out loud, the elephant in the room. But the question today is Sheffield City Council okay with this? I keep hearing Sheffield has nothing to do with this, but it's in our history. And it's in Britain's history too. I mean, Britain caused this through the Balfour Declaration, transferring the land which they didn't even own at the time. The British government remains unrepentant after all these years. It has yet to take any measure of moral responsibility, however symbolic, for what it has done to the Palestinians. And with the rise of Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, brewing of frustrations amongst our citizens, every single decision we make will have unintended consequences. Or we could just lose the faith and trust of our communities, which will spill over for years to come. So at a time when even trying to make a smart decision will have unintended consequences, it is best to make the right human decision. So yes, it is seriously our decision and it matters to us. It's in our history and it's in our present. So not only will history remember you, but the present will. We could be guilty. And I want to finish on this. We are a proud multicultural city that values every single individual regardless of their race, religion or ethnicity. As cities whose population looked to us and even more chose us to speak on behalf of them. So to conclude, let's be real, undiluted and honour our commitments as the leaders of the city and as human beings. We are not mindless drones who agree with the media's lies and warmongers who have no integrity. We're Sheffield, we stand with Palestine and we oppose the genocide being committed by the Israeli government, and this is why I formally second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. There are 2 proposed amendments, and these are numbers 1 and 2 on the list of amendments circulated at the meeting. May I call upon Councillor Zahara W to move amendment number 1, and again, you may speak for up to 2 minutes.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Like many of you, I have found the last few weeks incredibly difficult and heartbroken. It's hard to switch on the TV, turn on the radio, or read any of the papers. We know that 9,000 Palestinians in Gaza have been killed by the continuous bombardment. Over 3,000 children. Palestinians in the West Bank are also being subjected to attacks. This cannot be seen as defence and no other actions defensible when civilians are caught up in devastating situations. They are paying the ultimate price for something they never did, generations being crushed in a matter of hours. Palestinians and Israeli children are paying a heavy price. Those that are not killed or injured live in a chronic state of anxiety, both about the present situation and what the future holds. The killing and maiming of children, along with attacks on schools and hospitals, is a grave violation, and those responsible should be held to account for their actions. We cannot stand by and watch as innocent civilians die. We need this government to call for an immediate ceasefire and demand a peace process. We have a duty to push for peace. There must be humanitarian access to Gaza for food, water, medicine and electricity. The collective punishment of innocent people will not make Israel more secure and will not make the situation even worse.
We have seen churches, mosques bombed, as well as UN facilities, refugee camps, journalists and aid workers. It all needs to stop. We must be honest. This is the only in the latest in a long line, in a long circle of pain on both sides. What this needs is a peace process that builds for a long-lasting peace and ends the cycle of violence. Winning the peace requires justice. It requires respect for international law. That means providing security to Israel and self-determination and freedom for Palestine, including an end to the occupation for Gaza and the West Bank. We need a solution that protects Palestinian and Israeli lives. I am proud to call Sheffield my home. I am proud to live in a city of sanctuary. We must not let these issues divide us. We must come together and condemn all forms of racism. Let's take steps to build for peace. I hope this chamber will come together and collectively call for a ceasefire. Thank you.
Can I call upon Councillor Abdullah to second the amendment?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Whilst echoing everything my colleague has just said, it's very difficult to know where to start given the magnitude of what we are witnessing in Gaza right now. A catastrophic humanitarian disaster unfolding before our very eyes, and the world just looks on. Our topmost priority is to stop this killing immediately. So, Lord Mayor, first and foremost, this council, this city, all political parties, the UK government, indeed the world, must demand an immediate ceasefire to stop this indiscriminate bombardment and the killing of innocent civilians. What's happened over the last 3.5 weeks is very tragic, and I agree that all human lives are sacred, and we condemn the killing of innocent Israeli civilians by Hamas. But equally and unequivocally, we condemn the cutting off of essential supplies from the people of Gaza, the ongoing blockade by the Israeli government amounting to collective punishment, and the killing of thousands of innocent Palestinians. More than 8,000, over 3,500 children having been killed already. This is barbaric, Lord Mayor, to say the least. The world cannot just stand by and watch this happen. Indiscriminate killing of civilians and the loss of innocent lives can never be justified, and all atrocities committed against civilians must be condemned and investigated. We all must raise our voice, and we all must call for an immediate ceasefire. Lord Mayor, members of all political colours have always spoken up in this chamber against injustices, whether in Kashmir, in Yemen, in Myanmar and in Palestine, and we must speak up now. I therefore second this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now move on to amendment number 2, and can I call upon Councillor Penny Baker to speak for up to 2 minutes?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, members of every party in this room have expressed their regrets and their misgivings, not only in speeches but in words. If you look at all the notes of motions and all the amendments, they basically all say the same thing. There is absolutely no doubt that we call upon the British government to do the right thing. There is absolutely no doubt that we condemn hate crimes. There's no doubt that we need humanitarian aid out in the war front, because that's what it is. But it says nothing there about the stresses and strains and problems that people like yourselves have who are here in other countries. Those of you who are sat at home wondering if your families and friends are safe, if they're having anything for dinner, if they've got some water, even to drink. It is very difficult to know what we can do to help and support you, but we'll do what we can. In 2007, a group of people who were wondering exactly the same thing, with partners across the city and Sheffield City Council for support, set up Sheffield City Sanctuary to give what help, support and care we can to people who are in crisis. Just recently, it has updated its stakes, it is there, it is vibrant and supportive, and it's there for you also to lean on should you need it. It is also a way that the people of Sheffield can say to others that we care, that what is happening to you and what is happening to your families and your friends matters to us. And in the small way that ordinary people can, we will do our best to help and support you going through. We do care. We care very much. And as somebody said earlier on, that the government had lost its humanity. This city has not lost its humanity, and we will support you in every shape and way we can. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. May I call upon Councillor Andrew Sanger to second the amendment?
Lord Mayor, we are all horrified by the ongoing events in Gaza and Israel. The deep horrors of urban warfare are brought to our TV screens and phones with an immediacy we have not witnessed before. The Hamas terrorist attacks on Israel on 7th October were dreadfully shocking, choosing to target young people at a music festival and kibbutz communities who had often reached out hands of peace towards their close Palestinian neighbours. Israel has the right to protect its citizens from terror attacks in line with international law. But saying that does not give Netanyahu's war cabinet carte blanche to brutally cut off essential supplies of fresh water, food, medical supplies and electricity to the 2.2 million residents of Gaza. Innocent Palestinians must not pay the price for the terrorist atrocities of Hamas. The news gets worse every day. How many more innocent Palestinian civilians...
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Sanger, just pause a minute. Thank you. With the demonstrations going outside, no, I'm controlling this. And as I've said before, this is for council members to have their say. And will you give respect to Councillor Sanger and let him, like the others have been heard as well, let him finish his piece. Councillor Sanger.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The news gets worse every day. How many more innocent Palestinian civilians must get killed or injured before this war ends? Today, we join the call for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire to enable aid to be brought into Gaza and to seek the immediate release of all Israeli hostages. Lord Mayor, the square next to this town hall is called by the people of Sheffield the Peace Gardens. At this time of terrible sufferings in both Israel and Palestine, we must reach out to all the communities of Sheffield. There are many residents of Sheffield who have family or friends caught up in this conflict. Please keep them all in our thoughts in these difficult times. Sadly, across the UK, there's been a rise in hate crimes in recent weeks, a many times increase in anti-Semitism, with many British Jews reporting being intimidated. At the same time, there's been a rise in Islamophobia and abuse of Muslims. All hate crimes are wrong, and we must reach out to all communities and let them know that they have our support. Lord Mayor, there can be no military solution to the long-standing challenge of Israel and Palestine. We reaffirm our support for a two-state solution and lasting peace, which will allow all to live free from fear. In the here and now, we add our support for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
We now move to the debate. I thought I made it clear. We can't hear what you're saying anyway, but please, no, this is a debate with members. I don't want to clear the gallery, but I will do it myself. We now move to the general debate on the matter. We're probably going to exceed the 25 minutes. I've got 7 speakers, and I'm inclined with your indulgence to just take those speakers that I've got notice of already, and then we'll close the debate at that. So apart from Councillor Wilson, I've just seen, I will take no further speakers on that. So the first one is Laura Moynihan.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. First of all, I'd like to extend my sympathy for all those suffering in Palestine and Israel. The events unfolding in Gaza are truly, truly devastating. This conflict is historic, it's been long, and has led to many civilian lives being lost. And let's face it, we in the West have not been proactive in helping to broker a peaceful solution. That must not be the case going forward, and Britain must be vocal in that process. At a local level, many of our communities are suffering, and many of my Muslim colleagues have been under a great deal of pressure. I stand in solidarity with those colleagues, and they should have all our support. The role of councillors is to play a leading role in our communities. That includes bringing people from all backgrounds together, promoting cohesion and creating a welcoming and diverse city. I know it's going to be difficult. I appreciate all the feelings that people have on this issue. It's very emotive. But I would urge all colleagues and communities to come together moving forward. Our children need us to do this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker is Councillor Mohammed Mahroof. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I just don't feel worthy of standing up here and speaking about this. I'm seriously grieved about what's happening in the Middle East. We are witnessing one of the worst humanitarian crises that I've ever seen in my lifetime, in many generations as well. Whatever your position might be on this, no human being can stand and feel and not feel the horror, the grief, sympathy for the many children. And what I saw yesterday on the news, and it breaks me to see that, is young kids shrouded that have never ever even started their lives, being slaughtered. That is appalling. And civilians are losing their lives and livelihoods, homes, their dignity, their respect. I mean, can you imagine going home tonight and not having your family there? Somebody that you've been playing with in the morning or at work with during the day, not being there anymore. Everything is basically gone. I know tensions and emotions are high on this, and so they should be. But there's only one solution out of this, and that is a political solution, which is that there should be a two-state solution to this. And that is the only way that we're going to get satisfying peace. No, let me just finish. Let me finish. I don't believe there can be no justification for collective punishment. The issue lies with Mr. Netanyahu, who keeps bombing Gaza and Hamas. The innocent citizens that have been slaughtered, and I'll use that word, slaughtered, for no reason whatsoever. Is that going to engender peace? Of course it's not. If your family is completely destroyed, are you suddenly going to sit around a table and say, right, let's sort this out? This is creating generations of people and hate. And I can't stand by and watch that happen. There needs to be an immediate ceasefire, immediate humanitarian aid, and I can't see these kids suffering as they are. And well, as I said, it grieves me to stand here to even speak about this, and I'll just call it a day there, Lord Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Councillor Mahroof.
Thank you. Civilian deaths in Gaza continue to rise at a staggering rate amid relentless Israeli war crimes. By the next few days, over 10,000 civilians will have been murdered in Gaza through indiscriminate bombing and the targeting of civilians by Israel. More than a third of casualties in Gaza are young children, and countless broken bodies are still trapped beneath the rubble. Millions more face further displacement, dispossession and suffering. Israel's continued siege of Gaza has blocked the entry of food, water and fuel, leaving more than 2 million people in the Gaza Strip struggling to survive. The humanitarian catastrophe stemming from Israel's 16-year-long illegal blockade on the occupied Gaza Strip will only get worse if the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians does not stop immediately. In the face of such unfettered devastation and suffering, humanity must prevail. Sanctions need to be placed on Israel now. Many members in this chamber have made the active choice to remain silent over the last few weeks whilst the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians continues to take place. I am immensely disappointed in their silence and will not stand by and remain quiet whilst this genocide continues. I trust the public here today and everywhere else will take note of their silence. I support the Green Party's motion as a full and immediate ceasefire would put a stop to the war crimes being committed by Israel, halt the mounting murderous death toll in Gaza, and enable aid agencies to get life-saving aid, water and medical supplies into Gaza to address the staggering levels of human suffering. It will also allow hospitals to receive life-saving medicines, fuel and equipment they desperately need to repair damaged wards and continue saving lives. Let me remind members of the following. You don't have to be Muslim to support Palestine. You don't have to be Christian to care about Palestine. You don't have to be Jewish to stand up for Palestine. You don't have to be any faith to stand up for humanity. You only have to be human. I encourage members to be on the right side of history. Long live Palestine.
Thank you. The next speaker is Councillor Nigat Basharat.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. You all will agree with me that the situation in Middle East is terrible and heartbreaking. I haven't got any words, but I'm going to try. It's very hard, upsetting, and painful seeing the images of innocent lives being lost as we speak. No one can support or stay silent on the horrific, innocent killings of men, women, and children. And that's on both sides as well. But I keep hearing right to self-defense. I fully understand when your country is attacked, you have a right to self-defense. But under international law, this right comes with some moral obligations to protect innocent civilians, that you must protect basic human needs. And it depends how you exercise your right of self-defense, and collective punishment is a war crime. And we all have seen the Israeli government's approach. Just in these few weeks, over 9,000 people have been killed in Gaza and West Bank. They have bombed hospitals, refugee camps. There is total blockade, journalists and their families killed, religious buildings, mosques and churches are bombed. Far too many innocent Palestinian civilians have lost their lives, and my worry is the worst is about to come. Therefore, it's only right for our Prime Minister of this country and the leader of the opposition to call for an immediate ceasefire. It's already too late, and enough is enough. I'm grateful again to my Labour councillors who have come together, and we are sending a strong message for an immediate ceasefire and not a pause. And as a collective group, we have not been silent. We have been speaking nationally through our representative group, the Muslim Network Group, and very clearly and loudly within our local Labour Party on the horrifying incidents that are happening, and urging on the Labour leadership on the Gaza siege. And these are through collective letters which have been signed by many Labour councillors with over 200 signatures. And I just feel, as a party politics around this kind of stuff should be put aside and look at the humanitarian need at the moment and speak collectively, putting party politics aside and getting this stopped collectively. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sophie Wilson.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. First of all, I disagree and I think that we should take sides. We are politicians and that's what we do. Councillor Hunt says that he agrees that this eruption of violence did not happen in a vacuum. It happened after decades of violent oppression and colonisation. I don't agree that we have a need to review our flag policy, and so I won't be voting for that. The policy states that we have refused suggestions from government to fly flags in the past, and what we need is a proper apology. It was simply a bad decision which does not represent this chamber or our residents. I have seen Israeli apartheid with my own eyes, as have others in this chamber. I have visited illegal Israeli settlements and witnessed with horror the crimes which are committed against ordinary Palestinians every single day. If you haven't seen it personally, you've certainly seen the atrocities on the news. We need to take sides. Silence is complicity, and Western complicity is deadly. Secondly, I do find the Labour amendment deliberately confusing and ambiguous. Sorry if that wasn't intended. Are you trying to delete points BII, condemning all form of racism, and points BIII, stating Keir Starmer should apologise for supporting collective punishments via withholding food, water and electricity? Finally, friends and comrades who I know feel the same way as I do about this conflict, I agree with Councillor Basharat that this is a bigger issue than party politics. This is genocide, and my advice is to follow your conscience, demand a ceasefire, sanctions, an end to occupation, and a free Palestine. Solidarity.
Thank you. Councillor Shafak Mohammed.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, colleagues, for the notice of motion, but also the debate and the tone. I echo the comments made about actually seeking an immediate ceasefire, and it's our amendment calls for that, so does other people's. We also want to see that humanitarian relief opened up, and actually those desperately needing treatment, medicine, etc. should be given that help and support. I do not see a military solution to this issue. It doesn't matter how many times you bomb someone, you are not going to take their desire for freedom away. That's why we've always supported a two-state solution where actually two groups of people can live side by side in peace and security. One living in dignity, the Palestinians, but the other side living in security. However, for me, it's also about a personal value in a human. I can't stand back and watch on television on the 7th and the 8th people being massacred by terrorists, because it reminded me of something closer to home, the Peshawar massacre, where terrorists broke into a school and massacred innocent students who had nothing to do with what was going off with that government of Pakistan at the time. And we as a city came together, not to back a government or to back anybody else, but actually just to say, we feel your hurt. And for me, that was the thought process when the chief exec rang me on that Monday night, 72 hours after that first attack, to, as a Muslim, care about the slaughter of children at a pop concert, given my son on the same day was at Hillsborough with his friends watching football. Now, you can criticise me and Tom for all the decisions, but at least try to understand. And I say to you, you've got a lot of friends, the Palestinian cause in this council chamber, and they will remain regardless of how many times people shout and scream at us. Because for us, we care. And I tell you, Lord Mayor, just in the community that I live in, £14,000 were raised in the last few days. And they will be going to Brother Mashiach, who is trapped at the moment in Khan Yusuf. Yes, we will be supporting. So therefore, we will continue to actually shout. Shouting down to sisters doesn't win you over people. And trust me,
Actually, you need to work with people, and you had to. This cannot polarise communities. There's plenty of people out there that will care for the plight of the Palestinians, but you shouting at them is not going to help. Right? Absolutely, Israel is.
Thank you.
For me,
Thank you.
Lord Mayor, Israel is committing war crimes. It has to be held accountable. We are a city council. We're going to vote on a motion here. We are going to ask our government to do the right thing, and I hope the leader of the opposition there also. And that's what we're going to do in a minute, and we will go forward as a city together like we have done in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Angela Argencio.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I don't want to repeat lots of the things that have already been said by colleagues. I want to echo some of the words that you, Lord Mayor, said at the beginning. Quite a lot of us, whether we've taken a position or not, have been under a lot of pressure. And sitting here is not always easy, but it's the baggage that comes with the role. But we need to support each other, so my solidarity goes to colleagues that have been harassed and threatened by not taking a position on this. I agree with Councillor Wilson that we have to take a position. Although, I agree with Lord Mayor, we need to find what brings us together and be together as a city. This is about what kind of a city we want to be, and we cannot be silent in the face of injustice and genocide and war crimes. And I want to thank people who've come here today and people who are outside, because you've asked lots of the questions that we also have asked, but were ruled out of order. So my colleagues had asked some very similar questions about the flag that we couldn't ask. So thank you for asking those questions. I think the raising of the flag, I agree, we need to give an apology because it was really out of touch and not understanding our communities. That is what we need to do. We need to stop this culture of arrogance, and we know best. And my colleague sitting next to me said very clearly that it would not go down well with our communities. These are our communities. Those are our communities. Listen to them shouting outside. We need to apologize. Our group has also already asked the chief exec to fly the Palestinian flag. We have not heard the official response. We're waiting for the process to go through. So thank you very much for asking the questions we wanted to ask ourselves.
Thank you. The final speaker before we have this right of reply is Councillor Mohammed.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Like colleagues across the chamber, I too have been deeply saddened by the killings we have seen across the Middle East. Over the last 3 weeks, I have been contacted by many people across Sheffield. I have listened to people whose emotions have ranged from hurt, anger, despair, to helplessness. People from the Jewish community, the Muslim community, and people of no faith. People who are horrified by the killings in Israel, angered with the loss of innocent lives, but equally mortified by the scale of killings in Gaza. They ask of me, when will you condemn the innocent lives in Gaza with the same equivalence and strength? They ask of me, when will you recognise that this conflict has raged on for years? They ask of me, when will you recognise that 2 million people have lived in an open-air prison in Gaza, their environment hostile to the human condition? They ask of me, when will you call out the injustice, the innocent suffering of a people who have been forgotten? When will you acknowledge the discrimination, the displacement, the poverty and the violence that we have seen lasting for decades? They ask of me, where was your condemnation when the Al-Aqsa Mosque was attacked? When accelerated settlement building continues? When the forced displacements of Sheikh Jarrah took place? Or against the deadly assaults in 2012, 2014 and 2019? They ask of me, when will you question the number of people who have been killed, the 8,500, the 3,000 children, Palestinian children. Why are their lives being dehumanised? Why will nobody seek to defend them? My answer: violence is not a result for peace. Cycles of violence will only be locked to self-perpetuate more violence. We witnessed this in Afghanistan. We witnessed this in Yemen, in Syria, in Libya and Iraq. The killing of innocent Israelis will not bring peace for Palestinians in the same way that the oppression and killing of Palestinians will not bring Israelis closer to safety and security. We know that there will only be just and lasting peace when we end the violence, when we stop turning a blind eye to injustice, and when we end the contradiction between rhetoric and action, and when we appraise the situation on the ground honestly, recognising the historical context and resolve of all of our powers to ensure peace. We must not turn a blind eye for their sake. We must work to restore their hope. Thank you.
Thank you. The end of the debate, I'll give Councillor Alexi Dimond the right of reply. Up to 2 minutes.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Firstly, I and the Green Party do support boycott, divestment and sanctions. On the Labour amendment, there is a lot here that we welcome and support. We have been clear and consistent in condemning all atrocities. No killing of civilians is justified. Neither is any attempt to divide our communities. We oppose all forms of racism and always will. But there are some points to the amendment I can't support. Israel is an apartheid state. If the government of Israel collapsed, it would still be an apartheid state. Racism and discrimination is codified in Israeli law. There's a parallel court system for Palestinians and Israelis in the West Bank. Inside 48 Israel, Palestinians are not equal citizens and never have been. I encourage everyone to read the Amnesty International report on Israeli apartheid, read the citizenship law, read the nation-state law, read the law of return. On the deletion of reference to Keir Starmer's comments gave approval for collective punishment, and his continuing refusal to call for a ceasefire gives Israel the green light to keep killing. What David Lammy said last night in reference to the bombing of Jabalia refugee camp was indefensible. On deleting reference to and actions on Israeli apartheid, this shows that you are not committed to a just solution and equality in historic Palestine. To the Lib Dems, your amendment deletes our entire motion, so although there are some things I agree with, we cannot vote for it. In terms of condemning Hamas's atrocity, we have been consistent in condemning this atrocity and all atrocities, and will continue to do so as we believe all human life is sacred. My question to everyone is, do you condemn the collective punishment of Palestinian civilians? Do you condemn the bombing of schools and hospitals? Do you condemn the illegal 16-year siege of Gaza, world's largest concentration camp? Do you condemn the Israeli settlements, the occupation, the system of apartheid? Do you condemn the torture of political prisoners? Do you condemn all the massacres since 1948? On hostages, of course, we call for the unconditional release of all hostages. We also call for the release of hundreds of children held in Israeli prisons. We call for the release of the 1,800 Palestinians held without trial in administrative detention. We also call for the 1,590 Palestinians arrested in the West Bank since the 7th of October, and we call for the release of the 2.3 million people held hostage in Gaza for the last 16 years who are now under constant brutal bombardment. The question is, why don't you? The answer is endemic. The answer is endemic anti-Palestinian racism and a pervasive British colonial mindset which identifies with the coloniser, not the colonised.
I'm now going to go to the votes on the two amendments and then the substantive. The vote on the first amendment, amendment number 1, the Labour amendment moved by Councillor Zahara W. Is there any voting in parts?
Lord Mayor, in voting for, we'll be voting against clause 6.
And Martin?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So in voting for, we are voting against parts 2, 6, 9, 10B part 8, 11 and 14. Thank you.
Okay, Sophie.
Voting
well, hang on. Sophie.
Thanks. In voting against, but voting for points 1, 3, 10, B, VII, but the whole of 10, that's it.
Lord Mayor, please.
And Lewis, yeah.
In voting against, I'll be for parts 3, 4, 7 and 10. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Did you have an additional point about voting in parts? Do I have 10, a show of 10 hands? Yeah, that's more than 10 hands. Yeah. Okay, so it's recorded through the normal electronic system rather than the roll call. Yeah. Okay, just a reminder that make sure that you're logged in. You then have to indicate that you are here and make sure that your coloured lights will be lit up, ensures that you have voted. Okay, can we go to the voting on the First Amendment, please? We've got all 76 votes. Okay, well, that concludes the vote. We've got 76 members present in the chamber, 74 for, 2 against. There's been some voting in parts, and my colleague will work out which bits have got through on that. I think it means the way the different groups have split is that it has got, the Labour amendment has got through apart from paragraph 6. Okay, we're now going to the vote on the Second Amendment, which is the Liberal Democrat amendment moved by Penny Baker. So again, is there any voting in parts? Yes.
Lord Mayor, yes, thank you. In voting for the Liberal Democrat amendment, we are voting against just the opening paragraph wording from the deletion to and.
Okay, thank you.
Lord Mayor, in parts, please.
I'll get that then, get some legal advice here. Go on, Lewis.
In voting for, I'll be abstaining on I. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, Martin, yeah. Right, okay. Just to be clear, the effect of, I believe, the Labour amendment is basically, it won't be to delete all, it'll just be an addition. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that was clear. Councillor Rooney?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I was trying to ask the Chief Executive a question a little earlier about the fact that a decision on whether or not we join the coalition was going to be taken by Strategy and Resources rather than this body. And I think it should be taken here, not at Strategy and Resources, because it's a decision that we should, all 84 of us ought to be taking, not about 15 people.
I'm not sure what that's got to do in relation to this notice of motion. The last clause. Yes, okay. Chief Executive. Yeah, yeah.
other than the specific matters that are reserved to full council in the Constitution says that it has delegated all matters and can't take decisions on any matters that it has delegated unless by a motion before this council it removes that delegation and at a later meeting receives a full report which deals with all the implications of that decision. So it's not a decision that is before this full council today to be able to make that decision.
Okay, let's move to the.
There are 8 members in this chamber right now who will not get a voice in that decision.
Lord Mayor, point of order.
Pardon?
Point of order, Lord Mayor.
Go ahead, Councillor Fox.
17.4, Lord Mayor. What I'd like to ask is, I was led to believe that this body was the sovereign body of the council. And it's not, and it should be, if we are joining a coalition, and on the back of the notice of motion and some real passionate speeches in this chamber today, it should be for all 84 elected councillors of the city to make that decision. And it's been really passionate today, and I'm really impressed with a lot of comrades in this room of what they've had to say. And I honestly believe that as this is the sovereign body, it should be for all 84 members elected by the citizens of Sheffield to make that decision. I think Councillor Rooney is quite correct in asking for that clarification, Lord Mayor.
Let me just try and whoa. Let me just try and sort this out. This is for people in the public gallery. What we're talking about is D3. Request that the Strategy and Resources Policy Committee consider whether the Council should join the Sheffield Coalition against Israeli apartheid. The point that's been made by the points of order is that it should be the full Council that makes that decision rather than the 11 members of the Strategy and Resources Committee. There was the opportunity to amend this before we became here. We've now got to this stage where if you felt strongly about that, that should have been an amendment submitted prior to this meeting and rather than picked up just before we're going to the final vote on it. So, so therefore I note the points of order, but we're going to go ahead with the vote as it stands. Okay.
Lord Mayor.
Thank you.
Lord Mayor. Sorry, just for clarification.
I really don't want to have a prolonged debate on this.
It's just for clarification, Lord Mayor. If the Liberal Democrat amendment goes through, does that take that out of? Does that delete?
No, because the Labour amendment was to add the Liberal Democrat amendment to it rather than deleting the substantive motion. Thank you. Let us go to the vote on this, and then when we come to the substantive, I will try and make it clear what is before us. So we're now voting on the Liberal Democrat amendment.
Pressure now green.
that is now being passed. 62 votes in favour, 13 against. One person didn't vote, but we'll find out who that is. We're now then going to move to the vote on the substantive as amended by both the Labour amendment and now the Liberal Democrat amendment added to it. Is there any voting in parts on this?
Yes, please, Lord Mayor.
Who was that? Oh, Lewis, yeah.
Yes, please, Lord Mayor. In voting against, I'll be 4 parts B1 to B4, and as I voted with the amendments as well. Thank you.
Okay, Ruth? Martin then?
Yeah, so in voting for, we'll vote as we did on the amendment. I think that's the easiest way of saying it.
Okay. Councillor Alton? No. Sophie?
Similar to the Greens, as I voted in the amendments, thank you.
Okay.
No, thank you. We're voting for, we are going against only the original B3.
Sorry, you're voting for everything apart from the original B3. Okay, thank you. Councillor Lodge.
Yeah, in voting parts, in voting for, we're voting against that's now E3, I think, E3, that requesting the Strategy and Resources Committee.
So basically, the paragraph with the strategy and resources, whichever letter that is, you're voting against that. Yeah. Okay, that's clear. Can we move to the vote on that now, please? That's voting complete on that. 1 against, 75 in favour. So the upshot of all that is that what we have, and we will publish this as soon as possible on the website, so you've got all the different paragraphs, but substantially the original notice of motion has passed with additions from the Labour and the Liberal Democrat notice of motion. So what we've got is a cross-party consensus virtually on everything, calling for much of the things that the questioners and debate has been going on across the council. I know this has been very difficult for everybody, and everybody wants to quite rightly have their say. I did appeal for a statesman-like approach, which has largely been adhered to, and I thank you for that. And I think at the end of this debate, we have got a clear, united front from the Sheffield City Council going forward. And I will now call for an adjournment till 4:45 before we resume with members' questions. And thank you very much for your attendance today. Started the webcast, so please resume your seats. We're now up to going back to item 6 on the agenda, members' questions. There's a maximum time limit of 30 minutes for this. Questions on urgent business. There are no questions on urgent business. Questions on the joint authorities. This item is to provide an opportunity for members of the council to ask questions on the South Yorkshire Joint Authorities, the Fire and Rescue, Pensions and the Mayoral Combined Authority. I have noticed that I have questions from Councillor Douglas Johnson regarding the South Yorkshire Fire Rescue Authority. This concerns Mullin's burning, and this has enabled Councillor Tony Downs, the council's spokesperson on the Fire and Rescue Authority, to respond a response. Copies are actually on your table at the moment.
That's what I was going to say. Despite this is my opportunity to shine, Lord Mayor,
Yeah.
the questions have already been answered, the comment of the fire chief was there wasn't any legal requirement for people to consult, which would have been very handy if they had prior notice of any burnings, but at the moment that's not a legal requirement. And that's my big moment past. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. That was supplementary on that. Yeah.
Thanks. I'm assuming this comes as a sort of supplementary question, so just like to say, first of all, thanks for your time on the Fire Authority as this council's Section 41 rep. Also, although it says here a written answer will be provided, I just want to acknowledge that you have obtained that answer, sent it through to me, and in short, we asked the question about whether the fire service had been consulted on Mullin burning, as you said, and the fire service has said no, they weren't. And the relevance to that is it's about compliance with the relevant code of practice for people who want to burn moors. So yeah, take it as a supplementary question, but thanks for your answer, Tony.
A pleasure.
Thank you. There's actually then two questions on the South Yorkshire Mayoral Combined Authority from Councillor Ian Horner. These are concerning bus services, and there again is the written response from Councillor Hunt, who's our lead representative on the combined authorities. Supplementary question on that?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Councillor Hunt's laid out extensively about the lack of funding of South Yorkshire, which again we discussed last month. Why is it that South Yorkshire's Mayor didn't get any money when South Yorkshire's Labour Mayor didn't get any money, when West Yorkshire's Labour Mayor got some money, when Greater Manchester's Labour Mayor got some money? But Oliver Coppard said at the weekend, the programme that I took part in, that the money that the government's just released, the £7 million, will only take the authority back to 22. So my question to him is very simple. If you've now got funding that you had in 22, are you now going to go back and scrap the bus cuts of 23?
Councillor Hunt.
I think it's worth saying that the bus cuts that are sadly coming into effect now, I will repeat what I've said, as a result of the sustained chronic underinvestment of public transport in our region by this government. It's welcome that some additional funds have been released, and I know that the Mayor and the team right across South Yorkshire will of course look at them and see what can be done to look at the cuts that have had to come into effect this month. But I'm not going to be able to make promises that I can't keep now, so of course that will be looked at, and everybody wants to restore the services when we're able to. That requires fair funding. Everyone in this chamber knows that we do not have fair funding for our public transport right now.
Okay, thank you. We now move to the supplementary questions asked by members and the 33 pages that are on here. This is your opportunity to ask supplementary questions. I'll go through it as usual, page by page, and if you would indicate if you wish to ask a supplementary question, if so, which question you're referring to. So page 1. Yes.
Thank you. It is a shame you misled the public earlier today as to when the flag was flown, because by the start of 10th of October, Israel had already murdered nearly 700 Palestinians and injured nearly 4,000 through their indiscriminate bombing. In fact, Israel's defence minister said they would block food, water and fuel into the already blockaded enclave on October 9th. It is also notable that your regret is no comfort to the more than 3,200 children who have been slaughtered in Palestine. My question is this. On October 11th, you said that Sheffield City Council displayed the Israeli flag to show solidarity with the innocent people in that country who faced appalling acts of terror. You have today said the same. Would you now like to honour our request that you fly the flag of Palestine to show solidarity with the innocent people in that country who have faced appalling acts of terror from Israel since its creation?
Councillor Hunt.
Thank you very much. As I mentioned earlier on, the request that has been made by the Green Group is being considered. It's being considered appropriately. You've heard me lay out in great detail earlier on that we're going to review the flag protocol, and that's going to make sure that there is proper consultation with a range of people being able to input into that decision. That request has been made, and the request will be considered in exactly that way, and that is how we will form a decision, and you will be getting that information once it's been received. So, the position that I laid out earlier on is correct. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Horner.
Yeah, thank you for your reply, Councillor Hunt. This, if you pardon the pun, is a growing problem, how we manage our trees properly. Because if we don't manage them properly, we'll have huge problems in the future. And I know it's something that's shared by colleagues across the chamber, certainly in the South East. So I simply ask you this. I'm pleased that there is to be a review, but that review should happen as a matter of urgency. We need to get on with this. We need to properly look after our trees so we don't have future problems. Thank you.
I agree. I will find out for you what the timeline for the review is, if that will be helpful, and write to you about that.
Okay, page 2. Page. Do you want a supplementary, Councillor Dams? Go on then.
Leader and Deputy, it wasn't a trick question. I just thought it'd be useful for all of us if we were made aware of how busy you really are. So I just thought it'd be easier, because you both got secretarial support, if we just had a list of the meetings that you'd attended during that period. I'm sure it'd be helpful for all of us.
If that is of interest to members, in future we can look at providing perhaps the external engagements that I'm doing and provide details for you. So yeah, happy to be of assistance, Councillor Jones.
We'll be able to see how busy you are, but you won't get any extra money.
Yeah, just one supplementary. Page 3. Page 4. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I'm on page 3. It's the question on, in fact, I'm going to go on to page 4 because it's my second question to Councillor Dale. Thanks for providing the stats on incidents in schools. In context of things like Archer Lane and reopening roads to traffic that have turned out to be a really popular walking route to schools. The question is really, is it more risky for a child to be in school with these statistics or more risky for a child to be travelling to or from school?
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. I'll get officers to give you the reason why we don't have that information. Someone somewhere will clearly hold information on accidents, particularly road traffic accidents, if that's what you're getting at, and that would not necessarily be the local authority. That would be the police, ambulance service and the NHS for the Children's Hospital that may hold that information. But I will get officers to get you a full response on that. Thank you.
Okay, we're now on to page 4. Yeah.
Thanks for your answers to both my questions. I just wanted to do a follow-up on question 2 about Lane Sheffield. Oh, I'm so sorry. It's been that long. I've been sitting here that long. I'm stuck in the position. Just about the question 2 on Lane Sheffield. Now, I subbed onto the committee when the contract was extended earlier in the year, and even though we'd had informal conversations a year before, we ended up in the position where it was too late to do anything, so it was just rolled on. And so I just think that beginning with less than a year or thereabouts to go of the contract will be too late again and prevent anything, any serious work or potential improvements on what we have already. So I guess that my point is that I think it's too late to start that work with just a year's notice. And I guess, would you agree, and can we do something sooner, develop a timeline?
Thank you, Councillor Turpin. Yeah, as we agreed before, there will be an ongoing monitoring of the contract with Learn Sheffield, which we have asked to come back to committee. We will take all of that monitoring into account. I'm happy to bring that question to committee. But I think a year, if we've done ongoing monitoring for the first 12 months, if we can use that information when deliberating, we've got another 12 months then before we look at when we do the commissioning. But I will definitely take that back to committee. Thank you.
Right, page 5, page 6, Councillor Belvin.
Thank you for your answer, Councillor Johnson. Given the vital importance of providing decent housing for the residents of our city, would you agree that you regret the waste of the best part of a year in developing the housing strategy, despite the time and effort that was invested by Labour councillors, amongst others, in a group that, looking back, appeared to be all task and no finish, and that has now had to be passed to the Strategy and Resources Committee in order to actually get the job done?
Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, yes. I think it's fair to say that it's the nature of being a cross-party committee, cross-party task and finish group rather, that it hasn't made quite the progress that it might have done. There's a number of reasons, but they're set out in that answer, and I don't think I can add to them any better than that, really.
Still on page 6, page 7, page 8. Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson, I'm just wanting to follow up on question 8 on page 8. As the answer supplied to this question at the October full council meeting had the average waiting time in August for a phone line to be answered as 14 minutes and 48 seconds, and now here it's saying that the average waiting time in August was 5 minutes and 13 seconds. I'm sure there's no maliciousness behind that discrepancy. I'm hoping that you can look into that for me and we can get that data available. I was also wanting to follow up with this and saying that as much as I am perfectly happy to keep asking this question every month and keeping it in the public domain that way, in order to save officer time, could this be something that you can look into making live and publicly available on the council's website so that people can check on call volumes when they're wanting to make a call and they can make a decision before calling on that, just to help in that respect? Is that something that you're willing to look into?
Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, thanks. We can look into the figures there, don't know off the top of my head. And yeah, that is part of the work of the Housing Committee. So we could look at how the Housing Committee looks at its reporting on various stats. Might be a job for members of the committee to have a look at. Thanks.
Okay, we're now on to page 9. Councillor Rees.
Yeah, thank you for the reply. Given that the baseline information gathering will not be complete until November 2023, where we do not know how much of our housing stock is effective, if any, the 12-month period to complete all works seems a little bit presumptive. If there is a large number of properties, is that 12-month period to complete all work, is that, pardon the pun, a concrete target, or one that's got a little bit more flexibility?
It's always worth getting a pun in, isn't it? You know, even if it's pretty concretey. I was going to say lead and concretey, whatever. Yeah, targets are removable. You've got the answer there. I mean, that's where it is. I think the reality is that the expectation is there won't be a lot of this rat concrete in the council housing estate. And that's based on the knowledge of types of houses, where it was used, where it hasn't been, etc. But it's right that it should be done. So hopefully there'll be no works to do because there'll be no rack found there.
Okay, question 10. Sorry, page 10, page 11, 12, 13, 14. Go ahead.
Yeah, question 1. Oh, sorry. Do you accept that currently Archer Lane has no cars on it? Do you accept that children walking to school when there was no cars, when there's suddenly cars are put back and no measures are put in place, do you accept that that makes walking to school or cycling to school or wheeling to school less safe now that cars will be back there where previously they were not?
Thank you, Councillor Dimond. I do appreciate, of course, Lord Mayor, that Councillor Dimond feels really strongly about this issue. Of course, it's a matter where views across Nether Edge are really mixed, and we all have to acknowledge that. And it was right that my committee took a really pragmatic view and wasn't ideologically led about the solution to it. As you know, Councillor Dimond, in my response, it does state, doesn't it, that the information available to date does not suggest that the Nether Edge active neighbourhood project has had a significant impact on personal injury collisions. And I think that categorically answers this was a small-scale intervention. It didn't seem to have the effect that was desired.
Question 2 then, yeah.
Yeah, so obviously you have decided not to answer the question and not to admit that cars going down a road where there previously wasn't cars is obviously far more dangerous than when that not. But are you also aware, I'm referring to answer to question 2, are you aware that there are no temporary crossings on Archer Lane, therefore no measures to make it safer for children, as you have claimed in your answer?
I would refer Councillor Dimond to the answer that's stated in front of him. The reality is that we know that there were no. We know from the actual response to the committee that was provided that our local safety programme, of course, does prioritise data-led interventions to road safety issues. And, of course, as a council, we do have really robust processes of dealing with safety improvements upon our roads. And it is important to say that actually that's how we would respond to road safety issues. And we have to do that because we have to make sure, don't we, that these interventions, these engineering interventions, are put in place in areas where the need is the greatest, not necessarily where the voices are the most vocal.
We're on question 15, presumably question 3 or 4?
Yep. I'm just going to give you on question 3. So, how did the committee's decision contribute to road safety in Sheffield? Do you admit that, although I agree with you, we need road safety measures throughout the city, including the wards with the most deprivation, taking out a road safety measure does make it less safe for those children going to school. Do you agree with that statement?
Thank you, Councillor Dimond. I think it's important again to refer to the answer that the Nether Edge Active Neighbourhood Scheme did not have a significant impact on personal injury collisions during its implementation. The data doesn't support what you're saying, I'm afraid.
Remember that other members wanted to ask questions as well, is time limited.
Final question, question 4. Do you know that air quality is actually different from emissions and net zero targets?
As we know, the report was quite clear, wasn't it, that Archer Lane didn't have a perceptible change on air quality, and we have to be clear about that.
We're on page 15 still, page 16, page 17, 18. Yes, Councillor Crocott.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. It's question 3 about the tram cycle action plan. Thank you for the answer, Councillor Miskell. You say that you are in the process of producing an ambitious active travel network that will determine routes and develop priorities for the next decade to come. So my supplementary question is about consultation. What engagement have we had so far with the many interested cycling groups we've got across the city? How will they be involved in helping to develop this plan, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Groker. Of course, this is an issue that does predate my chairship of the committee. And I'm really pleased that actually that we have and that we are developing a really comprehensive digital cycle map to promote cycling across the city. And of course, that would involve a consultation with various different stakeholders, as you have mentioned as well. I'd be more than happy to meet with you about this matter and anything else as well. Thank you.
Page 19, next, 20, 21. Yes, Councillor Johnson.
Oh, question to Councillor Orson. We could just whisper it across the desk here. But, yeah, so the question is really about whether Sheffield's going to take a lead from Rotherham and be a bit more serious about parking enforcement by dealing with the persistent evaders of parking tickets, which don't have to be BMWs, but there we are. And although you say that the policy is to remove the vehicles of persistent evaders, I want to ask, how often does this happen and how many have been done in the last 12 months?
Thank you, Douglas. Yes, I'll get that information to you.
Page 22, page 23. Councillor Turpin. Okay.
So, beg your pardon with that. So on 22, the issue here is about Mullin burning. So go back to Council, and it's in the context that we've heard from the Fire Authority that they weren't consulted by the landowners, and also from Council Now's that the council as a landowner, we weren't consulted about burning on neighbouring lands. Those are both relevant to the relevant code of practice on Mullin burning that I referred to, and that appears to be one of the issues in connection with the abatement notice. So what we're proposing is that the council uses its powers with an abatement notice to tackle the issue of Mullin burning that has happened on at least 3 separate occasions in October. So it's clearly a repeated and likely to be repeated event. We just can't have this sort of smoke pouring into our city. So the question is, Councillor Austin, will your committee have a serious look at using the council's powers under the Environmental Protection Act and serve notice on the owners of estates who are burning such huge amounts of moorland? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Yes, no, I welcome this question. I can only apologise that we've not been able to give you a proper answer in the time that's available. I'm well aware of the issue that you talk about. I live on the west of Sheffield, and certainly where I live, we have smoke blowing across, and that we have no choice but to breathe in. And so it is my understanding that we don't have, it was my understanding, let's say until you asked this question, that we don't have the power to stop it happening. But I commend you on sitting up all night reading through the Environmental Protection Act and presumably all the other relevant legislation, looking for a power that we might be able to use. Because I look forward to the answer to this question myself, and I would certainly be very keen to do whatever we can to stop it. Thank you.
Councillor Turpin, yeah.
Thanks. Whoa. Thank you, Lord Mayor. Joe, thanks for your answers. So these were largely the supplementary answers that I didn't get time to ask last month to the questions. So, which one is it? Question 3, where you said that you referred the question up to Viola for a response. I mean, I could be wrong, sometimes I am, but So the 2,200 megajoules per tonne of energy for the food waste, and it's about 70 to 80% water. Now that 2,200 megajoules per tonne is about 20 to 30% of the larger 8,900 megajoules per tonne which you get from packaging. So one might leap to the conclusion that it would take approximately 6,700 megajoules to dry the food waste out, to get it into a state where it was combustible, which would suggest that it might just be more efficient not to burn the food waste at all. When do you think we will get some more data on this? And I look forward to sharing it.
Thank you, Paul. I mean, I wasn't clear from your question, I must say, until you explained it now, quite what you were getting at with the question. I don't think you can strictly compare dried out food waste with packaging either, so I don't think the two figures are comparable, even based on the, well, perhaps, but based on the kind of assumptions you're making. But I think you're absolutely right to ask the question and see what we can, so we can make our decisions regarding food waste based on the best information we have. Members may or may not be aware there is due to be a decision coming to Waste and Street Scene next week or the week after that will consider whether to apply for a transitional arrangement. Or that is the right to delay the introduction of a food waste programme. And I have asked for, you know, lots of information around that. I've been given figures on carbon saving for the whole thing, which obviously this relates to, but covers all the other carbon impacts of the service, which I'm not satisfied with. You know, the figures I've been given now show very little saving from introducing the trial, whereas previous the figures we had were very positive. So this all has to be taken into account, and this will be taken into account by the Waste and Street Scene Committee in a couple of weeks, of which, are you still a member? I forget, yes. This might be a sub. Well, I look forward to seeing you there if you come, and for you not to be wrong this time.
Yes.
Thanks. For question 4 about the carbon impact assessment, so when the food waste trial was undertaken, I was pretty shocked that a climate impact assessment hadn't been done before the trial. But when we discussed it, when I definitely was on the Waste and Street Scene Committee, and we authorised that trial to go ahead on the Policy Committee in this chamber, I raised that there was a lack of a climate impact assessment, and obviously it was too late to do one before the trial at that point. But I asked a direct question, will you do one to look back at the trial? And the answer was categorically yes. And with the former member of staff who no longer works here. And so I disagree with your answer, and I wonder if that can be done. It just seems to be, why are we continuing to assess that with modelling when we did a trial where we could assess it in the real world?
Thank you, Paul. I think you make a very fair point, and it's a source of immense frustration for me, I must say, that when we have decisions in front of us and there is a column for climate impact assessment, they'll often say, no, there isn't, or they might say something. But when we make decisions, as we did, for example, on some of the taxi licensing policies that materially affect the mix of vehicles that are going to be on the streets, are going to have a definite climate and air quality impacts as a result of those policies, we are told this is far too complex for us to model, and it doesn't fit into the assessment framework that we use. You know, I think you made good points, and we do need carbon impacts to understand the carbon impact picture for this. As I said in my previous supplementary answer, I've asked for more information than I've been given because I'm not satisfied with what I've been given. But you are quite right that there is a, whatever the particular point on carbon is, there is a lessons learned from the trial that we need to feed into the decision that's coming up. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got time for perhaps one or two more supplementary questions. We're on page 23, page 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31.
Lord Mayor.
Oh, go on.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Williams, for this answer. Just relating to question 2, can we ask the combined authority for opportunities for ward councillors to propose new sites for BNG? I repeated, sorry. Just can we ask combined authority for opportunities for ward councillors to contribute to identifying sites for biodiversity net gain?
I can think of no reason why we shouldn't. So I'll talk to the officers and see if we can build that in.
Thank you.
Okay, well, 31, 32, and 33. You spoiled it. Well, Councillor Smith is not here.
But my original question was to Councillor Hunt, so I'm wondering if Councillor Hunt can step into answering the question I originally asked him, given Councillor Smith's answer. So, Councillor Hunt, could you reassure businesses in Sheffield that actually Sheffield City Council, particularly the city centre, are serious about them, given some of the decisions that your colleagues have made recently that have negatively impacted them, like free Christmas parking?
I must admit, are you willing to do this? I'm slightly uncomfortable, Councillor Mohammed, sort of redirecting questions like this. We've had this issue before. Are you willing to say something?
I am. If there's any other members who aren't here, I think Councillor Chaplin, if other questions want to be redirected to me, it's fine. Okay. A proposal was put to the Wasting Street Scene Committee that was completely unfunded. Calls from the party, the Liberal Democrat group and across the chamber have been for us to make sure that we take budget decisions in a prudent, responsible way. I do not think that passing an unfunded budget proposal was the right thing to do. But when it comes to are we backing businesses in the city centre, yes, absolutely. This council take the hard decision to invest in the heart of the city development, which is now, over the next 6 months, coming to fruition. Sheffield City Centre is on the up, Councillor Mohammed, and I think we can see that day by day as the hoardings come down, the buildings go up, and soon we'll be announcing new businesses that are moving in. So I think absolutely we are looking forward to the work that's taking place on Fargate and around Pinston Street coming to fruition. It is the case that this year that meant that it wasn't possible to do the usual Christmas event. However, as I'm sure Martin Smith has said in his answer, I'm just reading it for the first time because it's his, not mine, that there will be a Christmas weekend of events taking place in mid-November. I hope everyone will be there. I'm sure it will be a big success and will be a further sign that Sheffield City Centre is very much on the up.
Thank you, and I was very disappointed that the Christmas light switch on wasn't going to be there, as it's a major role for the Lord Mayor to be there. So was this a deliberate
Excuse me, Lord Mayor, can I just point out that last year's Lord Mayor was ill,
yes,
and her deputy got to do it.
I know.
So I wouldn't have complaints if I were you.
But I enjoyed it so much I wanted to do it again.
Lord Mayor, please, on a point of order, can I just correct one thing? That the proposal for Christmas parking was funded from within a surplus within parking services generated by drivers in the city paying more than expected for parking and busgate fines.
Okay, you made your point. Councillor Groscourt is...
Just for your information, Lord Mayor, we have a magnificent switch on of Christmas lights at Fox Valley on the 17th of November, 4 till 8 p.m, and I'm sure you would be most welcome to attend.
Send me the invite then. Thank you. Right, okay.
Well, we also have one at Manor Park Centre.
I can't switch every light on in the city, but there we go. You will be disappointed to realise that unfortunately it is very unlikely that we're going to get to debate the notices of motion. We're now going to go back to the agenda, and it'll be item number 7, review of the allocation of seats on council committees. So this item of business is to approve a new politically proportionate scheme of seat allocations on the council's committee following a change to the composition of the council. A report has been circulated outlining the legal requirements to allocation of seats on the council committees to political groups on a politically proportionate basis, and as I say, that's been circulated on the desk. So, a motion to approve the new political proportionate scheme of seat allocations on the council committees and to appoint members to serve on these committees for the remainder of the municipal year 23-24 to reflect the new seat allocations has been circulated. Can I call upon Councillor Richards to move the motion?
Formally, Lord Mayor.
And Councillor Otten to second the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. In formally seconding, I'd just like to correct, so firstly to add as a substitute on Strategy Resources, Councillor Mohammed Mahroof. And also just to point out the names are correct, but the numbers are wrong under the Governance Committee, that it's going down from 11 to 9. But if you reinterpret the names in that light, it is obvious what's happening.
Okay, I think that's fairly clear. Anybody wish to speak? No. Is that agreed? Agreed. Okay, thank you. We have done item 8 on the agenda, and so therefore we move to item 9. And actually, we have got time to start the debate on this, so I think we'll have time for, it might run over slightly, but I'll allow the mover and seconder, especially if Councillor Dale is quick, to have their speeches, then we'll move past the guillotine. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'll be very quick because this is really not about me. So, thank you, Lord Mayor. I would like to put this motion forward as an advocate and champion for our people with care experience. We know that care experienced people face significant barriers that impact them throughout their lives, something I have witnessed firsthand coming from a family who have fostered children and have continued to support them into adulthood. When we listen to care experienced people share their stories of discrimination they have experienced, even from a very young age, it is very clear that such discrimination can be similar in nature to other groups that have legally protected characteristics under the Equality Act. Whilst we await a government who will respond positively to the call made by the Independent Review of Children's Social Care to pass legislation to enable this to happen, this motion sets a clear approach which has already been adopted by 63 other local authorities about how we act across the council as corporate parents. Working across all areas of the council, as though care experience was a protected characteristic, putting in place policies and programmes which promote better outcomes for care experienced people is our ambition. In Sheffield, we can already demonstrate our ambition to do this and are currently developing our new corporate parenting strategy in cooperation with our voice and influence workers and incorporating feedback from our Bright Spots survey. We have already begun to offer training to all members and directors, informing us about all of our responsibilities as corporate parents when representing our care experienced children and when developing policy and making decisions. We work closely with other organisations to ensure that they are aware of their responsibility and ask them to adopt corporate parenting principles. As corporate parents, we as councillors have a collective responsibility for providing the best possible care and safeguarding for the children who are looked after by us as an authority. We should be champions of the children in our care and challenge the negative attitudes and prejudice that exists in all aspects of society. In this motion, Lord Mayor, we ask that the Council will treat care experience as if it were a protected characteristics so that future services and policies consider care experience through equality impact assessments. and that other bodies adopt corporate parenting for children in care and care experienced people until such time as it may be introduced by legislation. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Second the motion. Councillor Dunn.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you. Sorry, long time since I've done that. Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Dale, for bringing this motion to Council today. It's an absolute disgrace that despite being a recommendation of the Independent Children's Care Review, the government has stepped back. In doing so, they have stepped back from their corporate responsibility for some of the most important children in our society. So on the 14th of June this year, Care Experienced Young People delivered this campaign to their doorstep. I don't know about you, but as a corporate parent, I was so immensely proud of them, not only for being determined and tenacious, but for being the voice for those who are too scared or can't. Every single one of us is a corporate parent, and I know from working with you that so many of you are dedicated and committed. And this council has already done so much to ensure their voice is heard, and the opportunities are there for all of them. However, we as a city and individuals need to do more, and it's to raise the need to make protected characteristics for care people happen. I have heard firsthand how they feel, the public perception that they are irrevocably damaged, that they are responsible for a rising homelessness and criminal justice system. Our children in care represent 1.4% of the population. So how on earth can they be responsible for 25% rising homelessness? They said to me, we are just young people dealing with everyday life. And people make assumptions about us. And if we do something really well, it's wow, aren't you smart? And you're a kid in care. Or if we struggle, it's understandable for what you've been through. Feelings like being made to feel like that, just a statistic. They told me it makes them feel like they want to pretend to be somebody else. As I said, we do a good job here in Sheffield. Social care, education and other services, they recognise their individuality and they tailor it. But we can always do better, and that is how we must break this stigma and stop this discrimination. Thank you, I'll stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Just struck me that actually every one of us should have declared an interest in this because we're all corporate parents, and it's something I feel actually personally quite passionate about, that we all bear responsibility for those looked after children that we should treat and think about as our own children as well. Okay, now the guillotine has passed, so we're into the formal moving in and second of the motion. So two proposed amendments, and amendment number 3 on the order of business. Councillor Alston.
Formally moved, Lord Mayor.
And Councillor Mahroof.
Formally, Lord Mayor.
And amendment number 4, Councillor Argencio.
Formally moved.
And Councillor Johnson.
Formally seconded, Lord Mayor.
And we're now going to move to the votes on the different amendments. So unless it's, is there any dissent on the first amendment moved by Councillor Alston, the Lib Dem amendment? So is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. And for the second amendment, the Green amendment, is there any dissent on that one?
Lord Mayor, in supporting this, we wish to abstain on 2 because we didn't quite understand what it was trying to do.
I think, is there general agreement otherwise? And if, okay, we still need to run the vote because...
I mean, to be honest, Lord Mayor, if there's general agreement otherwise, let's withdraw. We're happy to support it all, I think, and save a bit of time.
So I take it there's general agreement. Both amendments are passed. Agree. We move to the vote on the substantive. So I'm assuming that is agreed in full. The amendments agreed. Thank you. Yes. And okay, we now move to item 10 on the notice of motion regarding regulation the supported accommodation sector. And Councillor Baker, formally move. And Councillor Masters.
Formally seconded, Lord Mayor.
Right. Again, there are two proposed amendments. And can I ask Councillor Mollin
Formally moved, Lord Mayor.
and Councillor Belvin?
Formally seconded, Lord Mayor.
And the second amendment, Councillor Johnson.
Formally moved, Lord Mayor.
And Councillor Little.
Formally seconded, Lord Mayor.
Okay, we're now moving to the vote on the first of those amendments, which is the Labour amendment. Is there any dissent on that? Crikey. Okay, that is agreed. The second amendment, the Green amendment, is there any dissent on that?
Yes.
It had to end at some point. Is there any voting in parts? Ruth?
Lord Mayor, yes, in voting for, we are voting against 2E.
Yeah, Diane?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. In voting for, we are voting against 2E.
I'm just looking at Councillor Otten. No, okay, so we will need to run the vote on that one. So we're running the vote, just to be clear, we're running the vote on the Green amendment now. Right. And that means if it's E, it'd be Labour and NA 68, so how many have Labour got? 27 and 3, that's 30. What is it? The E will still be in then, won't it? Yeah. Okay, thank you. I think there's one person still to vote, and it's not me.
It's upstairs.
Oh, right, okay. It keeps changing in front of me now. There's one person who's registered to vote who hasn't voted. Yeah, but she won't register to vote if she's not here. Oh, it's good. It's done. It's done. We've got 64 in favour, 1 against. Although some have left the room already, so it's only... Okay. I think that means, and Paul will correct me, that E has still been carried because of Green and Lib Dem is more than the other two. Okay, so we now move to the substantive. Vote on the substantive. Is there any voting in parts? Yeah.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Again, whatever number 2A ends up being in voting for, we're voting against. Thank you.
Yeah.
The same, Lord Mayor, still voting against 2E.
Lord Mayor, over here, in parts, please. In voting for, I'll be against 2D and 2E of the Green Amendment. Thanks.
Okay. And can we now then go to the electronic vote on the substantive motion? Okay, that's 66 in favour, and I think it's the same as last time, that E will still be carried. That, whatever it is, yeah. Okay, thank you very much for that. We now move to the final notice of motion, item number 11, the notice of motion regarding stopping the Conservative government sewage pollution scandal. Councillor Norris.
Formally moved.
And Councillor Milsom.
Formally seconded.
There are two proposed amendments, 7 and 8, on the list circulated. Councillor O'Leary.
Formally moved, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Williams.
Formally moved, Lord Mayor.
And the second of those amendments, Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Formally moved.
And Councillor Dimond.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Formally seconded.
Okay, let us move to the vote on the first of those amendments, which is the Lib Dem one. Is there any dissent on that?
Dissent, Lord Mayor.
Yes, dissent. We move to electronic voting on this then.
In parts,
but
please.
voting in parts, go on. Can I get that first? So, Ruth?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. In voting for this amendment, we are voting against 1, 5 part Roman 8, 5 part Roman 9, 6 Roman 5 and 6 Roman 6.
I'm glad Paul is taking a note of all that. Right, Lewis?
In voting against, I'll be for part 4 and abstaining on 7 in part 5.
Okay. Diane?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. In voting for, we're against 7 at the first one.
Okay. Right, can we then start electronic voting on that, please? Okay, I think what's happened here is the combination of the 11 against and the Labour bloc voting means whatever you voted against has been lost. Okay. So we now go to the second amendment, the Green amendment. Is there any voting in parts on that?
Yes, please, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So in voting for this, we are abstaining on 3X, that's 310, and against 5.
Okay, Ruth?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. In voting for this amendment, we are against 3X and against 5.
Lord Mayor.
Unanimity. Yeah, go on.
In voting against, I'll be for parts 2 and 6.
Okay, Diane? Okay. Can we start the electronic voting then? Thank you. I think we've got all the votes in there. Swift. Oh, hang on. One still to vote. That's done. Clearly that has passed, but the combination of the Lib Dem and Labour votes means, I believe, that 3X and 5 have been lost. Okay? Picking up on this, aren't I? Okay, so that was the substantive. So we now move on to item number 12. Oh, we haven't done the substantive. Okay, so is there any voting in parts on the substantive?
Yes, please.
Yes, Diane and Lewis.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The first part of the Lib Dem amendment that we voted against.
Still voting against.
Still voting against it, whatever it ends up as.
Lewis?
In voting against, I'll be for A6, B1 to B3, C3, and as I did with the amendments as well. Thanks.
Pardon? Yeah, if you can put a note to Paul so we make sure you get your votes recorded correctly. Okay. Right. Ruth? No? Okay, so let's go to the voting on this, please. One person still to vote.
No, that's 63. Oh, 64. I think it's 68 in the room.
Well, not. Remember, you have to press the blue button first to register here. 65 people have, and now 65 people have voted. The indication is when you're voting, if you haven't lit up one of the coloured bits, you haven't voted, but everybody has now. 64 in.
Sorry.
It keeps changing. Hang on. 65 in favour, 1 against. So that has been passed. Okay, thank you. So that concludes the notices of motion. We therefore go on to item 12, appointment to Chief Officer post and approval of the salary package. This item of business is to approve the salary package for the post of Director of People and Culture, which is above £100,000. The Council's statutory pay policy statement requires that all pay and benefits package in excess of £100,000 are approved by full Council. A report of the Chief Operating Officer on this matter has been published with the agenda for the meeting. The motion is to A. Note the information contained in the report of the recruitment exercise and salary package for the post of Director of People and Culture, and B. Approve the proposed total salary range for the post in the range 99,784 to 106,960. The motion is moved by Councillor Maleiki Haybe,
Formally moved, Lord Mayor.
and seconded by Councillor Mayor Richards.
Formally, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. I'm now going to move to the vote on it. Is there any dissent? Dissent, so therefore we will have the electronic vote on this. $62 people down to vote, 58 in favour, 4 against, so that is passed. Okay, thank you. Item 13 on the agenda, membership of the Council's bodies and representatives to serve on other bodies. That has been circulated, and it is to be moved by Councillor Richards and seconded by Councillor Otten that approval be given to the changes in the membership of committee and other council bodies and the appointment of representatives to serve on external bodies relating to issues as detailed in the schedule circulated at the meeting. Councillor Richards.
Formally, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Otten.
Formally, seconded, Lord Mayor.
I'm now going to move to the vote on this. Is there any dissent? Is it all agreed? Thank you. The motion is carried. I think that concludes the business of today's meeting. Rather than just saying thank you for your attendance today, actually...
Sorry, Lord Mayor, are there
thanks.
minutes?
Pardon?
Are we meant to agree minutes?
Not according to my script. So, okay, work demands have meant that the October minutes are not ready yet, and so they will be at the next council meeting. Councillor Rooney?
Sorry to continue with my being a pest this afternoon. I just wondered if it would be appropriate to mention something about the sad death of the ice hockey player at the arena over the last few days. He was killed because somehow or other his jugular got cut by another player's skate, and he died.
Thank you, Councillor Rooney. Yeah, I mean, the Nottingham Panthers, the close rivals of the Steelers, but it was heartwarming in some ways to see the way the two clubs have come together, and of course this was at the Sheffield Arena as well. The chief executive and the leader have written to the Steelers and the Panthers, and to offer condolences in this, but thank you for bringing that to the attention of the council, and I think we'll record it in the minutes of this meeting that we offer support and condolences to not just the immediate family of the ice hockey player, but actually to the players involved that had to stand around and form a screen round him, and also to try and shield the crowd. But there were 8,000 people there as well, which also must have had a view of the proceedings, and I think it's very sad and something totally unexpected. It's a rather sombre note at the end, but thank you for bringing that up. What I was going to say, I usually say just thank you for your attendance, but I want particularly to say thank you for the way that this meeting has been conducted this afternoon, because I think we all had a fear that it could have gone horribly wrong in some ways, and whilst it was robust and heartfelt, it was conducted in the right manner and views were expressed in the right manner. So I thank you for helping me out and helping everybody out in communities in Sheffield in respecting that. So thank you and good night.